Many people ask God for wisdom. They pray for guidance before an important decision. They ask for peace when life becomes uncertain. They want stronger relationships, better judgment, greater self-control, and the ability to avoid mistakes they have made before. Yet despite those sincere prayers, many continue to trust the wrong people, speak before thinking, ignore wise correction, delay what needs to be done, and make choices based on temporary emotions. The problem is not always that wisdom is unavailable. Sometimes the problem is that we do not recognize it when it speaks. The Book of Proverbs was written for moments exactly like these. It does not offer ideas that belong only to another time or culture. It speaks directly to the situations we still face every day, the words we use when we are angry, the people we allow to influence us, the way we handle money, the decisions we make under pressure, the habits that quietly shape our future, and the condition of our hearts before God. Proverbs teaches us that wisdom is not merely the ability to know what is right. Wisdom is learning to recognize the right path and having the character to walk in it. Over the next 3 hours, we will explore 100 powerful lessons from the Book of Proverbs. Each one will reveal a biblical principle that can help us think more clearly, speak more carefully, choose more wisely, and live with greater peace, integrity, and purpose. Some of these lessons may confirm truths you already understand. Others may challenge habits you have never questioned, and a few may help you realize that a problem you considered unavoidable actually began with a warning you overlooked, a conversation you handled poorly, an influence you underestimated, or a decision you made too quickly. As we continue, we will examine what Proverbs teaches about the heart, the power of words, friendships, anger, humility, discipline, work, money, family, adversity, and our daily relationship with God. But these lessons are not arranged randomly. Each section builds upon the one before it. We will begin with the foundation of all true wisdom. From there, we will move inward to the heart, outward to our words and relationships, and then into the decisions and responsibilities that shape our future. And stay with us until the final lessons, because they will show us what a genuinely wise life looks like when circumstances become difficult, when the future is uncertain, and when no one else is watching. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Write the name of your city or country below. Our mission is to share the word of God across every nation and carry its message to the ends of the earth. Seeing where you are watching from helps us understand how far this mission is reaching. You may also want to keep a notebook nearby, because among these 100 lessons, there may be one principle you need to remember, one habit you need to change, or one decision you need to place before God. Do not approach this simply as information to hear. Approach it as wisdom to practice, because the true value of Proverbs is not measured by how many verses we can remember, but by how deeply its truth changes the way we live. And that brings us to the first and most important question. Where does real wisdom begin? Before we can learn how to make better decisions, control our words, choose the right relationships, or build a stable life, we must first identify the source from which all true wisdom flows. Proverbs does not leave that question unanswered. It begins by directing our attention away from human pride, personal opinion, and self-confidence, and toward God. So let us begin with the foundation upon which every other lesson in this journey will stand. Lesson 1. Wisdom begins when we acknowledge God. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Proverbs 1:7. The first lesson in Proverbs is also the foundation of every lesson that follows. True wisdom begins with the fear of the Lord. This does not describe a terror that causes us to hide from God. It describes reverence, a deep awareness of His holiness, authority, goodness, and greatness. To fear the Lord is to recognize that God sees what we cannot see, understands what we cannot understand, and knows the end of every path before we take the first step. Many people seek wisdom without seeking God. They read advice, follow successful personalities, listen to popular opinions, and depend upon their own experience. Some of those sources may contain useful information, but Proverbs teaches that information alone is not enough. A person may be educated and still make destructive decisions. A person may be intelligent and still be ruled by pride. A person may know many facts and still fail to recognize what matters most. Biblical wisdom begins when we stop treating ourselves as the highest authority in our lives. It begins when we say, "Lord, your judgment is greater than mine. Your ways are higher than mine. Teach me to see this situation as you see it." That posture changes everything. It makes us teachable. It softens our resistance to correction. It keeps us from believing that every strong feeling must be followed or that every personal opinion must be defended. The fool rejects instruction because the fool believes there is nothing more to learn. The wise person approaches God with humility, knowing that every area of life must remain open to his guidance. Before asking God to bless your decisions, ask whether your decisions honor him. Before asking him to confirm your direction, ask whether you have truly listened to his word. Wisdom does not begin when we finally understand everything. It begins when we acknowledge the one who does. And once we recognize God as the source of wisdom, we must confront one of the greatest obstacles to receiving it, our tendency to trust ourselves too much. Lesson 2. Do not trust only your own interpretation. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Proverbs 3:5. Our understanding is useful, but it is limited. We see only part of the situation. We interpret events through our experiences, expectations, wounds, fears, and desires. What appears obvious to us today may look completely different when more information is revealed tomorrow. This is why Proverbs warns us not to lean entirely on our own understanding. The image is important. To lean on something means to place our weight upon it. It means depending on it to hold us up. God is not telling us to stop thinking. He is teaching us not to make human reasoning the foundation of our confidence. There will be moments when obedience makes sense immediately. There will also be moments when God's direction appears slower, harder, or less comfortable than the alternative. Trusting him with all our heart means believing that his wisdom remains good, even when we do not yet understand what he is doing. Sometimes our emotions say, "React now." Wisdom says, "Wait." Our pride says, "Prove yourself." Wisdom says, "Remain quiet." Our fear says, "Take control of everything." Wisdom says, "Place this in God's hands." Trust becomes real when it influences what we do, not merely what we say we believe. Anyone can claim to trust God when his direction agrees with personal preference. The deeper test comes when his word challenges what we want. Perhaps you are facing a decision that seems perfectly reasonable, yet something in your spirit remains unsettled. Do not ignore that pause. Bring the matter before God. Examine your motives. Compare the decision with Scripture. Seek wise counsel. Your understanding can describe what is visible. God's wisdom reaches beyond what you can see. But trusting God is not only about rejecting self-reliance, it also requires inviting him into every part of the path ahead. Lesson 3. Include God in all your decisions. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. Proverbs 3:6. Many people turn to God only for the decisions they consider spiritual. They pray about church, ministry, or moments of crisis, but make choices about relationships, work, money, habits, and future plans without seriously seeking his direction. Proverbs says, "In all your ways, acknowledge him," not in some of your ways, not only when you feel confused, not only after your own plan has failed. To acknowledge God means to recognize his authority and presence in every area of life. It means asking how your choices reflect His character and whether your direction agrees with His truth. God is concerned with more than the final destination. He also cares about the path we take to reach it. A goal may appear good, but the method used to pursue it may involve compromise. An opportunity may appear profitable, but accepting it may require the sacrifice of peace, integrity, family, or faithfulness. A relationship may feel exciting, but excitement alone cannot reveal whether it is wise. When we acknowledge God, we invite Him to examine not only what we are doing, but why we are doing it. Are we motivated by faith or insecurity? By obedience or comparison? By purpose or the desire to impress others? The promise is that God will direct our paths. This does not mean He will always reveal the entire journey at once. Often, He gives enough light for the next faithful step. Direction may come through scripture, prayer, wise counsel, conviction, closed doors, or a growing clarity that develops over time. Our responsibility is not to force the future. Our responsibility is to remain attentive and obedient. God can direct the person who is willing to be redirected, and that willingness grows when we honestly recognize how limited our own vision can be. Lesson 4. Recognizing our limitations protects us. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and depart from evil. Proverbs 3:7. One of the most dangerous forms of foolishness is believing that we are already wise enough. A person who is wise in his own eyes becomes difficult to teach. Advice feels like criticism. Correction feels like disrespect. Warnings are dismissed as negativity. Even obvious signs of danger may be ignored because admitting uncertainty feels too uncomfortable. Proverbs connect self-confidence with spiritual danger. Do not be wise in your own eyes. This does not require pretending that we know nothing. It requires remembering that whatever we know is incomplete. We can misjudge people. We can misunderstand our own motives. We can become emotionally attached to a decision and then search only for reasons to justify it. We can call something faith when it is actually impatience, or call something discernment when it is really fear. Humility protects us because it allows us to stop, listen, reconsider, and change direction. The verse continues by telling us to fear the Lord and depart from evil. These two actions belong together. The more clearly we see God's holiness, the less casually we treat what can lead us away from Him. Wisdom does not stand near danger to prove its strength. Wisdom recognizes weakness and creates distance. It avoids environments that repeatedly encourage compromise. It establishes boundaries before temptation becomes overwhelming. It admits when a particular influence is damaging the heart. There is protection in saying, "I may be wrong." There is strength in asking for help. There is maturity in accepting that sincere intentions do not guarantee wise results. God does not require us to know everything. He asks us to remain humble enough to be led. Yet recognizing truth is only the beginning. A person can receive good instruction and still refuse to practice it. That leads us to the difference between merely hearing wisdom and truly living by it. Lesson 5. Knowledge is useless without obedience. Because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord, they would have none of my counsel and despised my every rebuke. Therefore they shall eat the fruit of their own way. Proverbs 1:29-31. This passage gives us a serious warning. The people described did not lack access to wisdom. They rejected it. They heard counsel but refused to follow it. They received correction but despised it. They knew that another path was available, yet continued choosing their own way. Eventually, they experienced the fruit of those choices. We often want wisdom to remove consequences without requiring change. We want peace while continuing the habits that create confusion. We ask God to restore relationships while refusing to control our words. We pray for financial stability while ignoring discipline. We ask for direction while repeatedly dismissing the truth we have already received. Knowledge alone does not transform us. A person can know that forgiveness is right and still hold bitterness. A person can understand the importance of patience and still react impulsively. A person can memorize scripture and still resist its authority when it touches a painful or inconvenient area. Obedience is where wisdom becomes visible. It is possible that the answer to your current struggle is not hidden. Perhaps God has already shown you what must change, but obedience feels costly. Maybe you need to apologize. Maybe you need to end a harmful pattern. Maybe you need to stop returning to an environment that weakens your convictions. Maybe you need to act on something you have delayed for months. Wisdom heard but ignored cannot protect us from the result of our decisions. God's instruction is not given to restrict life, but to preserve it. Every act of obedience strengthens our ability to recognize His voice again. Every repeated compromise makes that voice easier to dismiss. The question is not only, do I know what God says? The deeper question is, am I willing to live according to what I know? And because obedience requires understanding, Scripture teaches us that wisdom must be pursued with intention. Lesson 6. Wisdom must be sought intentionally. My son, if you receive my words and treasure my commands within you, so that you incline your ear to wisdom and apply your heart to understanding. Yes, if you cry out for discernment and lift up your voice for understanding, if you seek her as silver and search for her as for hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord. Proverbs 2:1-5. Wisdom rarely enters a distracted life by accident. This passage uses active words: receive, treasure, incline, apply, cry out, seek, and search. Each word reveals intention. We live in a world filled with voices competing for our attention. Opinions arrive continuously. Advice is offered before we ask for it. People speak confidently about subjects they barely understand. If we do not intentionally seek godly wisdom, we will naturally absorb whatever is loudest, easiest, or most appealing. Proverbs tells us to seek wisdom as we would search for treasure. A person searching for treasure does not give up after looking for a few minutes. He studies, digs, returns, and continues because he believes what he seeks is valuable. Do we approach God's wisdom with that same hunger? Do we read Scripture only when we need immediate comfort? Or do we treasure it enough to build our lives upon it? Do we ask God for discernment only after trouble begins? Or do we seek it before making commitments? Intentional pursuit may mean creating quiet space for prayer. It may mean studying a passage slowly instead of rushing through it. It may mean listening carefully to mature believers who have walked faithfully through situations similar to ours. Wisdom requires attention because distraction prevents reflection. Many poor decisions are not made because people consciously choose evil. They are made because people never pause long enough to examine where a path is leading. Seeking wisdom creates that pause. It teaches us to ask better questions. What will this decision produce in 1 year? What desire is influencing me? What warning am I tempted to ignore? What would obedience look like here? When wisdom becomes precious to us, we stop treating God's instruction as an interruption. We begin to recognize it as protection. And the good news is that those who sincerely seek discernment are not searching for something God desires to withhold. Lesson 7. God gives discernment to those who seek Him. For the Lord gives wisdom. From His mouth come knowledge and understanding. Proverbs 2:6. Wisdom ultimately comes from God. We may gain insight through experience, books, conversations, mistakes, and observation, but every truth that leads us toward righteousness reflects the wisdom that originates in Him. This should give us confidence. God does not invite us to seek wisdom while hiding it beyond our reach. He is generous toward those who approach Him with humility. However, Divine wisdom does not always arrive as an immediate answer. Sometimes God gives discernment by changing the question we are asking. We ask, "How can I get what I want?" He teaches us to ask, "Why do I want it?" We ask, "How can I make this person understand me?" He asks whether we have listened with the same care we expect from others. We ask, "How can I escape this uncomfortable season?" He may show us what this season is developing within us. Discernment is more than knowing the difference between good and evil. Sometimes it means recognizing the difference between what is good and what is best, between a genuine opportunity and a distracting one, or between an urgent demand and an important responsibility. God's wisdom helps us see beneath appearances. It reveals when flattering words are hiding selfish motives. It helps us recognize when fear is disguising itself as caution. It warns us when pride is influencing a decision that appears reasonable. But we must remain close enough to His truth to recognize that guidance. A heart filled with constant noise will struggle to hear quiet conviction. A mind shaped entirely by the world's values will find God's priorities difficult to understand. Ask for wisdom, but also create room to receive it. Listen through Scripture. Observe the fruit of different paths. Pay attention to repeated warnings. Remain willing to surrender the answer you hope to receive. God gives wisdom not merely to satisfy curiosity, but to guide faithful living. And once we understand its power, we begin to see why Scripture considers wisdom more valuable than material wealth. Lesson 8. Understanding is more valuable than riches. How much better to get wisdom than gold, and to get understanding is to be chosen rather than silver. Proverbs 16:16. The world often measures success by what a person possesses. Income, property, influence, recognition, and comfort become visible signs that someone is doing well. Yet Proverbs repeatedly challenges that definition. Gold can purchase convenience, but it cannot guarantee peace. Silver can provide options, but it cannot ensure good judgment. Wealth can expand a person's opportunities, but without wisdom, those opportunities may lead to pride, excess, conflict, or ruin. Wisdom determines how every other blessing is used. Money in the hands of a wise person can become provision, generosity, stability, and service. Money in the hands of a foolish person can magnify selfishness and accelerate destruction. The same principle applies beyond finances. Talent without wisdom can become arrogance. Influence without wisdom can harm many people. Opportunity without wisdom can lead us into commitments we were never prepared to carry. Understanding is more valuable than riches because it helps us recognize what is truly worth pursuing. It teaches us when enough is enough. It protects us from sacrificing family, health, integrity, and faith for achievements that cannot satisfy the soul. This does not mean material resources are evil. Proverbs also teaches responsibility, diligence, stewardship, and generosity. The danger begins when wealth moves from our hands into our identity. When money determines our worth, we become controlled by comparison. When possessions become our security, loss becomes unbearable. When success becomes our highest goal, compromise begins to look reasonable. Wisdom reminds us that what we become is more important than what we accumulate. A person with limited possessions, but clear judgment, honest character, peaceful relationships, and faith in God possesses something wealth alone cannot produce. Seek the kind of understanding that remains valuable in every season. Wealth may increase or disappear. Circumstances may improve or become difficult. But wisdom can guide you through both abundance and lack. And one of the primary ways God develops that wisdom within us is through something we do not always enjoy receiving: correction. Lesson 9. Correction is also a form of love. My son, do not despise the chastening of the Lord, nor detest his correction, for whom the Lord loves, he corrects, just as a father the son in whom he delights. Proverbs 3:11-12. Correction can feel painful because it confronts the image we have of ourselves. We prefer affirmation. We enjoy hearing that our intentions are good, our decisions are reasonable, and our behavior is justified. But growth requires more than encouragement. It also requires truth. Proverbs teaches that God's correction is not evidence of rejection, it is evidence of love. A careless person watches someone move toward danger and says nothing. A loving person is willing to speak, even when the conversation is uncomfortable. God corrects us because he sees what certain attitudes and choices will eventually produce. He exposes pride before pride causes a greater fall. He confronts dishonesty before dishonesty destroys trust. He reveals unhealthy attachments before they gain greater control. Divine correction may come through scripture that troubles our conscience. It may come through consequences that force us to reconsider a pattern. It may come through the words of someone who loves us enough to be honest. Our first response may be defensiveness. We may focus on the tone of the person speaking rather than the truth of what was said. We may explain our motives, compare ourselves with someone worse, or search for reasons the correction should not apply to us. Wisdom asks a different question. Is there something here that God wants me to see? Not every criticism is accurate, and not every opinion deserves authority, but rejecting all correction makes growth impossible. A teachable heart can separate truth from poor delivery. It can examine itself without collapsing into shame. It can acknowledge failure while trusting that God's grace still offers a way forward. Correction is not meant to leave us condemned. It is meant to restore direction. When God reveals something that must change, respond quickly. Confess it. Learn from it. Make the necessary adjustment. Do not waste the pain by refusing the lesson. Those who receive correction become stronger, wiser, and more stable. And stability is precisely where this first section has been leading us. Lesson 10. Wisdom produces a stable life. My son, let them not depart from your eyes. Keep sound wisdom and discretion, so they will be life to your soul and grace to your neck. Then you will walk safely in your way, and your foot will not stumble. Proverbs 3:21-23. A stable life is not a life without difficulty. It is a life that remains grounded when difficulty comes. Proverbs promises that sound wisdom and discretion help us walk safely. They do not eliminate every obstacle, but they keep us from creating unnecessary ones. They do not prevent every painful season, but they help us respond without abandoning what is true. Wisdom brings stability because it gives our lives a dependable foundation. Without that foundation, emotions become our guide. When we feel confident, we move forward. When we feel afraid, we retreat. When we feel offended, we react. When we feel discouraged, we abandon responsibility. But feelings change quickly. God's truth does not. A wise person still experiences fear, anger, disappointment, and uncertainty. The difference is that those emotions are not given complete control. Wisdom says, I may feel angry, but I do not have to speak destructively. I may feel afraid, but fear does not have to make this decision. I may feel discouraged, but I can still remain faithful today. Discretion helps us recognize what a moment requires. Some situations require action, others require patience. Some conversations require honesty, others require silence. Some opportunities should be accepted, others should be declined, even when they appear impressive. The more deeply wisdom is formed within us, the less easily we are controlled by pressure, praise, criticism, or impulse. This kind of stability develops gradually. It grows each time we acknowledge God, instead of depending entirely on ourselves. It strengthens each time we obey what we know, seek discernment, value wisdom above temporary gain, and receive correction with humility. These first 10 lessons have established the foundation for everything that follows. Wisdom begins with God. It requires trust. It invites His direction. It recognizes human limitation. It moves from knowledge into obedience. It must be intentionally pursued. It is generously given by God. It is more valuable than material wealth. It receives correction. And when these truths take root, they produce a life that can remain steady even when circumstances are not. But wisdom cannot remain only in our beliefs. Eventually, it must reach the hidden place from which our desires, reactions, motives, and decisions flow. That place is the heart. And before Proverbs teaches us how to manage our words, relationships, work, money, or future, it calls us to protect what is happening within us. Because the life we build outwardly will always be influenced by the condition we cultivate inwardly. Lesson 11. Protect what you allow into your heart. Keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring the issues of life. Proverbs 4:23. Proverbs tells us to guard the heart diligently because everything else in life is influenced by what happens there. In Scripture, the heart represents more than emotion. It includes our desires, thoughts, motives, affections, and inner commitments. It is the place where we decide what we will value, believe, pursue, and permit to shape us. What repeatedly enters the heart rarely remains without effect. The conversations we listen to, the images we watch, the ideas we entertain, and the people whose opinions we continually absorb all leave an impression. At first, that influence may seem small. A bitter thought is repeated. An unhealthy desire is justified. A comparison is entertained. A lie is heard often enough that it begins to sound reasonable. Eventually, what entered as a suggestion may become an attitude, and what became an attitude may begin directing our choices. Guarding the heart does not mean living afraid of everything around us. It means developing discernment about what deserves access to our inner life. Not every voice should shape your identity. Not every desire should be trusted. Not every emotion should be given authority. You may not control every thought that enters your mind, but you can decide which thoughts will be welcomed, repeated, and allowed to remain. Fill your heart with truth before lies arrive. Cultivate gratitude before comparison takes root. Address resentment before it becomes bitterness. Bring temptation into the light before it grows stronger in secrecy. A guarded heart is not a closed heart. It is a heart carefully protected so that love, wisdom, faith, and truth can continue to grow within it. And what we permit to remain in our hearts will eventually influence the way we see ourselves and the life around us. Lesson 12. Your thoughts eventually define your conduct, for as he thinks in his heart, so is he. Proverbs 23:7. Our actions do not appear without preparation. Long before a behavior becomes visible, it is often rehearsed internally through repeated thoughts, imagined conversations, private justifications, and silent beliefs. What we consistently think about begins to shape what feels normal. If a person continually thinks, "No one respects me," ordinary disagreements may begin to look like personal attacks. If someone repeatedly believes, "I will never change," every failure becomes evidence that growth is impossible. If the heart constantly rehearses anger, revenge may eventually appear reasonable. But the same principle can work in a different direction. When we meditate on truth, gratitude becomes more natural. When we remember God's faithfulness, fear loses some of its influence. When we choose to think about what is honorable and wise, our reactions gradually begin to reflect those values. This does not mean that every negative thought makes us guilty, or that difficult emotions can be removed through positive thinking alone. It means we must pay attention to the inner narratives we repeatedly accept. Some thoughts must be questioned. Is this true? Is this fear describing reality or only imagining the worst? Am I judging someone's motives without knowing their heart? Am I allowing one painful moment to define my entire future? Wisdom teaches us not to believe every thought simply because it feels convincing. Bring your thinking under the light of God's truth. Replace exaggeration with honesty, hopelessness with remembrance, and resentment with prayer. Your mind is continually forming the responses you may give tomorrow. Therefore, do not wait until a destructive action appears before addressing the thought that has been feeding it. But even when we learn to examine our thoughts, there is something deeper that only God can judge perfectly: the motive behind them. Lesson 13. God sees the intentions. Others cannot see. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the hearts. Proverbs 21:2. Human beings are remarkably skilled at explaining their own behavior. We can make selfishness sound like wisdom, impatience sound like courage, avoidance sound like peace, and pride sound like confidence. Our actions often appear right to us because we evaluate them from the perspective of our own desires. But God sees beyond the explanation. He weighs the heart. Two people may perform the same action for completely different reasons. One may help another person out of compassion. The other may help because he wants recognition. Both actions appear generous, but God understands the motive beneath each one. The same is true in our spiritual lives. We may pray publicly because we love God or because we want to appear faithful. We may remain silent because wisdom requires restraint, or because we are using silence to punish someone. We may pursue success to serve others, or because achievement has become the source of our identity. The outward action does not always reveal the inward truth. This is why honest self-examination is necessary. Before asking whether an action looks right, ask why you want to take it. Are you seeking God's will, or trying to secure His approval for a decision already made? Are you correcting someone because you love them, or because proving them wrong makes you feel powerful? Are you withdrawing from a relationship to establish a healthy boundary, or to avoid a necessary conversation? We may deceive other people. We may even deceive ourselves. But God cannot be deceived. That truth should not only produce fear, it should also bring relief. God sees the sincere intention that others misunderstand. He knows when obedience is costly. He recognizes the hidden battle behind a faithful decision. Invite Him to examine your motives. A heart willing to be searched is a heart that can be purified. And when hidden motives are brought before God, the heart can begin to experience the quietness that wisdom produces. Lesson 14. A tranquil heart gives life. A sound heart is life to the body. Proverbs 14:30. A tranquil heart is not a heart that never faces trouble. It is a heart that is not continually ruled by inner conflict, comparison, resentment, and uncontrolled desire. Proverbs describes this inner peace as life to the body because what happens within us often affects the way we carry life physically and emotionally. A peaceful heart allows us to rest without endlessly replaying every conversation. It helps us respond thoughtfully rather than living in constant defense. It creates room for gratitude, patience, clarity, and hope. But tranquility cannot be produced merely by arranging perfect circumstances. Some people have very little and still possess peace. Others appear to have everything they wanted and remain deeply unsettled. True peace depends less on controlling everything around us and more on trusting the one who remains in control. This does not mean ignoring problems. Wisdom confronts what must be confronted. It makes necessary changes, establishes boundaries, seeks help, and takes responsibility. But after doing what can be done, wisdom refuses to live as though everything depends entirely upon human strength. A tranquil heart learns to release what it cannot control. It does not demand immediate answers to every question. It does not measure its worth through constant comparison. It does not allow every criticism to become a crisis. Ask yourself what has been disturbing your inner peace. Is it an unresolved offense, a future you are attempting to control, a comparison you continue feeding, a responsibility you know you must address? Sometimes peace comes through surrender. At other times, it comes through obedience. In both cases, tranquility begins when the heart is brought back into agreement with truth. Yet Proverbs places peace beside its opposite and exposes one of the strongest forces capable of destroying it from within. Lesson 15. Envy destroys from within. A sound heart is life to the body, but envy is rottenness to the bones. Proverbs 14:30. Envy rarely announces itself honestly. It may appear as constant criticism of another person, irritation at someone else's success, or an inability to celebrate blessings we secretly wish belonged to us. Envy begins when another person's life becomes the standard by which we evaluate our own. Instead of noticing what God has placed in our hands, we focus on what He has given someone else. Their progress makes us feel delayed. Their recognition makes us feel invisible. Their opportunities make us question our value. Proverbs says, envy is like rottenness within the bones because it damages us internally. The person we envy may not even know what is happening, yet our own peace, gratitude, and relationships begin to suffer. Envy distorts vision. It shows us the visible blessing in someone else's life while hiding the sacrifices, responsibilities, and struggles that may accompany it. It also causes us to overlook the goodness already present in our own story. The cure for envy is not pretending that disappointment does not exist. Sometimes it genuinely hurts to watch someone receive what we have prayed for. Wisdom allows us to admit that pain before God without allowing it to become hostility. We can say, Lord, I am struggling to celebrate this. Help me trust your timing. Gratitude also weakens envy because gratitude redirects our attention from what is missing to what has already been entrusted to us. Learn to bless what God is doing in the lives of others without interpreting their progress as evidence of your failure. Another person's blessing does not reduce God's ability to care for you. You are not running their race. Faithfulness is not measured by whether your life develops at the same speed as someone else's. Envy asks, why do they have what I want? Wisdom asks, how can I faithfully use what God has given me today? And when the heart learns to trust God's timing, it becomes better prepared for one of life's most difficult experiences: waiting. Lesson 16. Hope sustains the soul during the wait. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but when the desire comes, it is a tree of life. Proverbs 13:12. Waiting can exhaust the heart. A prayer remains unanswered. A door does not open. A relationship is not restored. A promise seems distant. And what began as hopeful expectation slowly turns into disappointment. Proverbs does not dismiss that pain. It acknowledges that delayed hope can make the heart feel sick. There is a particular weariness that comes from wanting something good and having no control over when or whether it will arrive. During that kind of waiting, the heart becomes vulnerable. We may be tempted to force an outcome, accept a substitute, abandon wise boundaries, or assume that God has forgotten us. But delay is not always denial, and silence is not always absence. Some seasons of waiting protect us from receiving something before we are ready. Others expose motives that success might have hidden. Waiting can deepen patience, clarify desire, and teach us to depend on God rather than on a specific outcome. This does not make waiting easy. Faith is not pretending disappointment does not hurt. Faith is bringing that disappointment to God without allowing pain to become distrust. Continue doing what is faithful while the answer remains uncertain. Pray honestly, seek counsel, Prepare for the opportunity you hope to receive. Remain open to the possibility that God may answer differently than you imagined. The verse also describes fulfilled desire as a tree of life. When a long-awaited answer finally comes, it brings renewal and gratitude that would not have existed in the same way without the waiting. But even before the desire is fulfilled, hope can still sustain us when it is anchored in God rather than in one specific circumstance. Your confidence is not merely that everything will happen exactly as you planned. Your deeper confidence is that God will remain faithful regardless of how the story unfolds. That kind of hope protects the heart from despair and makes room for a joy that circumstances alone cannot create. Lesson 17. Inner joy also strengthens the body. A merry heart does good, like medicine, but a broken spirit dries the bones. Proverbs 17:22. Joy has a strengthening effect. It does not solve every problem or remove every sorrow, but it changes the way we carry them. A joyful heart helps us recognize goodness even when life is imperfect. It gives us emotional space to breathe, laugh, connect with others, and remember that pain is not the only reality present. Biblical joy is not forced cheerfulness. It does not require us to deny grief, pretend everything is fine, or cover deep wounds with religious language. There are seasons when the spirit feels broken, and Proverbs acknowledges the heaviness of that condition. A crushed heart can drain motivation, weaken hope, and make ordinary responsibilities feel overwhelming. In those seasons, joy may return gradually. It may begin through rest, honest prayer, supportive relationships, professional help, worship, or the simple decision to notice one evidence of God's goodness today. We should never shame people for struggling emotionally, nor should we glorify despair as though remaining broken is the only honest response to pain. God meets us in sorrow, but He also leads us toward restoration. Protect the sources of healthy joy in your life. Spend time with people who bring peace rather than constant turmoil. Remember answered prayers. Allow yourself to enjoy ordinary gifts without guilt. Celebrate progress even when the journey is incomplete. A cheerful heart can also become medicine to others. Your encouragement may lighten someone's burden. Your gratitude may change the atmosphere of a home. Your ability to carry hope may remind another person that darkness will not last forever. Joy is not always loud. Sometimes it is simply the quiet confidence that pain will not have the final word. Yet when the heart remains wounded and unaddressed, that pain can begin to shape our expressions, our energy, and the way we relate to others. Lesson 18. Bitterness changes the way we see life. A merry heart makes a cheerful countenance, but by sorrow of the heart, the spirit is broken. Proverbs 15:13. What lives in the heart often appears on the face, in the voice, and through the atmosphere we carry into a room. Inner pain influences outer behavior. A person who has been deeply hurt may begin interpreting every action through suspicion. A disappointed heart may expect rejection before anyone has rejected it. Bitterness can cause new people to pay for wounds they did not create. Pain does not make someone wicked, but pain left unexamined can begin directing the personality. We may call it discernment when we are actually afraid to trust. We may call it strength when we have simply become emotionally distant. We may believe we are protecting ourselves while quietly building walls that also prevent healing. Bitterness is especially dangerous because it often feels justified. We remember what was done to us, and perhaps the offense was real. Forgiveness does not require pretending the harm was acceptable. It does not remove every consequence or demand immediate reconciliation without evidence of change. Forgiveness means refusing to let another person's wrongdoing continue governing our heart. It releases personal revenge into God's hands. Healing may require honest conversations, distance, boundaries, counseling, prayer, and time. But it also requires a willingness not to make pain our permanent identity. Ask God to show you where yesterday's wounds are influencing today's reactions. Are you responding to the person in front of you or to someone from your past? Are you protecting wisdom or protecting bitterness? A healed heart does not forget every scar. It simply refuses to let the scar decide the future. As bitterness loses its control, we begin to recognize something many people discover too late. External abundance cannot compensate for an atmosphere filled with conflict. Lesson 19. Peace is worth more than abundance with conflict. Better is a dry morsel with quietness than a house full of feasting with strife. Proverbs 17:1. This proverb presents two homes. One contains very little food, but it is filled with quietness. The other contains abundance, celebration, and a table prepared with more than enough, but conflict has taken control of the atmosphere. Proverbs says the simpler home is better. That statement challenges the way success is often measured. People work hard to create a comfortable home, provide opportunities, and accumulate possessions. Those things can be meaningful blessings. But comfort without peace becomes difficult to enjoy. A large house cannot protect a family from the effects of constant anger. Expensive meals cannot repair disrespect. Financial success cannot replace trust, affection, safety, and honest communication. Sometimes people sacrifice peace in order to obtain more, only to discover that what they gained cannot restore what was lost. The pursuit of abundance may create exhaustion, absence, competition, or tension when it is not guided by wisdom. This proverb does not praise poverty or discourage responsible ambition. It corrects our priorities. A simple life filled with gratitude and unity may contain more genuine wealth than an impressive life dominated by hostility. Consider the atmosphere you help create wherever you live. Do your words make people feel safe enough to speak honestly? Do you bring calm into tense moments or increase the conflict? Are you protecting relationships with the same determination used to protect possessions? Peace does not mean that disagreements never occur. Healthy homes still face pressure, disappointment, correction, and difficult conversations. The difference is that conflict is handled without contempt, humiliation, manipulation, or uncontrolled anger. Sometimes preserving peace requires an apology. Sometimes it requires speaking the truth gently. Sometimes it requires refusing to continue an argument when emotions are too intense for wisdom. And sometimes peace requires addressing a problem that silence has allowed to grow. The goal is not merely a quiet house. It is a home where truth and love can exist together. These 9 lessons have shown us how powerfully the inner life affects everything around us. We must guard what enters the heart because our thoughts influence our conduct. We must examine our motives because God sees beneath appearances. We must cultivate tranquility, resist envy, hold on to hope, protect healthy joy, confront bitterness, and value peace above impressive appearances. But there is still one final truth we must understand. Even with careful reflection, we cannot examine ourselves perfectly. There are motives we overlook, desires we excuse, and contradictions we do not immediately recognize. Other people see only our actions. We see our intentions, but even our understanding of them may be incomplete. God alone sees the heart without distortion. Lesson 20. God examines the depths of our spirit. The spirit of a man is the lamp of the Lord, searching all the inner depths of his heart. Proverbs 20:27. God does not examine us superficially. He sees beyond our public behavior, carefully chosen words, and the explanations we give to others. His light reaches the hidden places within us, the motives we have not questioned, the desires we have not admitted, and the attitudes we may not even recognize in ourselves. Proverbs describes the human spirit as the lamp of the Lord. A lamp reveals what darkness keeps concealed. In the same way, God uses our conscience, His word, prayer, correction, and moments of honest reflection to illuminate what is happening within us. Sometimes that light reveals faithfulness. God sees the obedience no one applauded, the temptation you resisted privately, the kindness you offered without recognition, and the sincere desire to honor Him even when your efforts were misunderstood. But His light may also reveal areas that require change. It may expose resentment beneath polite behavior, pride beneath apparent confidence, fear beneath excessive control, or selfish ambition beneath a goal that appears admirable. Our natural response may be to avoid that examination. It is easier to evaluate other people than to sit quietly before God and allow Him to search us. We quickly notice the faults of those around us while remaining unaware of the same tendencies developing within our own hearts. Wisdom does not run from the light. It welcomes it. A wise prayer is not only, "Lord, change my circumstances." It is also, "Lord, show me what must change within me." Ask God to reveal what you cannot clearly see. Where have you been defending an attitude that needs correction? What fear has been influencing your decisions? What desire has become too important? What wound continues to shape the way you respond? God reveals these things not to humiliate us, but to heal and guide us. His examination is precise, but it is also merciful. When He exposes something unhealthy, He also offers grace to confess it, wisdom to address it, and strength to begin living differently. The heart directs the entire course of life. That is why Proverbs teaches us to guard it, examine it, and continually bring it before God. What enters the heart affects our thoughts. Our thoughts influence our motives shape our choices, and sooner or later, everything cultivated within us begins to appear through one of the most powerful instruments we possess: our words. A single sentence can encourage someone who is losing hope. Another can deepen a wound that remains for years. Words can calm conflict, reveal character, preserve trust, or destroy it in moments. Now that we have examined the heart from which our words emerge, we are ready to consider how wisdom should govern what we say. Lesson 21. A calm answer can stop an argument. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Proverbs 15:1. Conflict often grows because one person's anger awakens anger in another. A sharp tone receives a sharper response, and soon the goal is no longer solving the problem, but defending pride. Proverbs offers another way. A gentle answer can interrupt the cycle. Gentleness is not weakness, nor does it require us to ignore wrongdoing. It means refusing to let another person's lack of control determine our own response. A calm voice creates space where anger expected resistance. Sometimes wisdom simply says, "Let us continue when we are calmer." You cannot control another person's tone, but you can decide whether their anger will govern yours. Before responding, ask, "Will my next words bring clarity or add more fire?" A soft answer may not immediately change the other person, but it protects your character and prevents one difficult moment from becoming a deeper wound. And words do far more than influence one argument. They can shape the direction of a life. Lesson 22. Your words can produce life or destruction. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. In Proverbs 18:21. Words can remain in the heart long after the voice that spoke them has become silent. Encouragement may give someone courage during failure. A careless insult may become a wound repeated internally for years. Words can restore dignity or destroy trust. Proverbs teaches that our speech produces fruit. If we repeatedly speak with contempt, relationships become unsafe. If we constantly complain, gratitude weakens. But when truth is spoken with love, words become a source of life. We can apologize without excuses, express gratitude, and remind someone that one failure does not define their future. Consider the fruit your words have been producing. Do people leave conversations with you strengthened or diminished? Do your words bring clarity or confusion? Wisdom does not avoid difficult truths, but it refuses to use truth as a weapon. Because words carry such power, Proverbs warns us about one of the easiest ways to misuse them: speaking without restraint. Lesson 23. Speaking too much increases the possibility of error. In the multitude of words, sin is not lacking, but he who restrains his lips is wise. Proverbs 10:19. The more we speak without reflection, the more opportunities we create for exaggeration, gossip, pride, and regret. Sometimes we continue because silence feels uncomfortable or because we want the final word. But every thought does not need to be expressed. Every opinion does not need to be announced. Every misunderstanding does not require an immediate explanation. Restraint is not insecurity. It is evidence that we understand the weight of speech. Before continuing a conversation, ask, am I adding clarity or merely repeating myself? Am I trying to solve the problem or win the argument? Do I need to answer, or do I simply dislike being misunderstood? There is freedom in not responding to everything. You do not have to answer every provocation or join every debate. Measured speech gives our words greater credibility. When people know we do not speak carelessly, they are more likely to listen when we do speak. And restraint creates time for something essential: thought. Lesson 24. The wise think before responding. The heart of the righteous studies how to answer, but the mouth of the wicked pours forth evil. Proverbs 15:28. A wise response begins before any words are spoken. Proverbs says, the righteous heart studies how to answer. It considers the truth, the timing, the tone, and the possible effect of the response. An impulsive mouth does the opposite. It pours out whatever emotion is present without considering what may follow. Many apologies begin with, I did not mean it. But damage was still done because emotion moved faster than wisdom. Thinking before responding may require only a few seconds. Take a breath, listen fully, and ask whether your emotions allow you to answer fairly. Sometimes the wisest response is, let me think about that. A thoughtful answer can separate facts from assumptions and express disagreement without disrespect. Study not only what you want to say, but what the moment requires. Does this person need correction, comfort, explanation, or simply to be heard? And sometimes, after careful thought, wisdom concludes that the best answer is silence. Lesson 25. Silence can also be wisdom. He who has knowledge spares his words, and a man of understanding is of a calm spirit. Proverbs 17:27. Silence is often mistaken for weakness. Some fear silence will look weak, but Proverbs presents restraint as knowledge and self-control. A calm spirit does not react to every accusation. It understands that some conversations are productive, while others exist only to provoke. Silence can prevent anger from speaking for us, protect confidence, and keep an argument from growing. There are insults that lose their power when they receive no reaction. There are misunderstandings that repeated explanations will not correct. Yet silence must also be guided by wisdom. Remaining quiet when truth should be defended can become cowardice. Withholding communication to punish someone can become manipulation. Wise silence is restraint with purpose. It asks, will speaking now bring truth, healing, or necessary clarity? When the answer is no, silence may be the strongest response available. But there are also moments when carefully chosen words become exactly what another person needs. Lesson 26. A timely word can change an entire day. A word spoken in due season, how good it is. Proverbs 15:23. The same words can have very different effects depending on when and how they are spoken. Advice given too early may feel dismissive. Encouragement at the right moment may keep someone from giving up. Wisdom pays attention not only to content, but also to timing. A grieving person may need presence, not explanation. Someone who failed may need assurance that restoration is still possible. A word in due season fits the need of the moment, and that requires listening. Ask God to help you notice the discouraged person, the overlooked family member, or the friend who needs honest guidance. Never underestimate a sincere sentence spoken at the right time. I am grateful for you. You do not have to face this alone. You can begin again. Simple words may become strength to a weary heart, and when our speech is shaped by wisdom, it can do more than encourage. It can heal. Lesson 27. A wise tongue can heal deep wounds. There is one who speaks like the piercings of a sword, but the tongue of the wise promotes health. Proverbs 12:18. Some words cut like weapons. They target insecurities and strike where pain will be greatest. Spoken in seconds, their wounds may remain for years. Proverbs contrasts reckless speech with the tongue of the wise. Wise words promote health. They do not flatter dishonestly or avoid necessary truth. They communicate truth in a way that makes restoration possible. A healing word may be an honest apology, needed reassurance, or correction spoken privately and respectfully. Before speaking about another person's weakness, remember that your words can create a path toward growth or make that person afraid to be honest again. Use your knowledge of others to protect them, not to injure them. There may also be destructive labels you need to stop speaking over yourself. Take responsibility for failure, but do not make your worst moment your permanent identity. The wise tongue becomes a channel of courage, reconciliation, and hope. Yet some of the deepest damage occurs when people speak about others in their absence. Lesson 28. Rumors can separate close friends. A perverse man sows strife, and a whisperer separates the best of friends. Proverbs 16:28. Rumors rarely remain harmless. A whispered comment creates suspicion. A partial story is repeated without context. Soon, people who once trusted each other begin interpreting every action through doubt. Gossip often disguises itself as concern, information, or even prayer. But wisdom asks, does this person need to know? Have I confirmed what I am repeating? Would I say this if the person being discussed were standing here? Not every true detail should be shared. When someone brings a rumor, refuse to continue the chain. Encourage direct communication and protect the absent person's dignity. One incomplete story can damage a reputation and weaken a friendship. Wise people understand that trust takes years to build and moments to fracture, and gossip becomes even more destructive when it involves something entrusted to us privately. Lesson 29. Revealing secrets destroys trust. A talebearer reveals secrets, but he who is of a faithful spirit conceals a matter. Proverbs 11:13. When someone shares something personal, they place part of their vulnerability into our hands. How we handle that information reveals our character. A faithful person knows that private knowledge is not social currency to gain attention or importance. Once trust is broken, forgiveness may come before openness returns. If someone is in danger, abused, or threatening harm, responsible help may be necessary. Protection is not gossip, but most secrets are revealed not because intervention is needed, but because restraint is absent. Before sharing another person's story, ask whether you have permission. Be the kind of person with whom others can speak honestly without fearing that their weakness will become public conversation. Faithfulness is often demonstrated through what we choose not to repeat, and the person who learns to protect the words of others must also learn to guard their own mouth. Lesson 30. Controlling your tongue can prevent great trouble. Whoever guards his mouth and tongue keeps his soul from troubles. Proverbs 21:23. Many problems cannot be solved with words because they were created by words. A careless promise disappoints. An angry accusation damages intimacy. One impulsive message can turn temporary emotion into lasting consequence. Proverbs teaches that restraint protects us from many troubles we would otherwise create for ourselves. To guard something means to watch it deliberately. Wise speech rarely happens by accident, especially when we are tired, embarrassed, jealous, or angry. Do not send the message while furious. Do not make promises under pressure. Do not repeat facts you have not confirmed. And do not use honesty as an excuse for cruelty. Before speaking, consider 3 questions. Is it true? Is it necessary? Can it be said with wisdom? Sometimes courage will require us to speak. At other times, restraint will protect everyone involved. These lessons have shown that words can calm anger, heal wounds, preserve trust, or destroy relationships. But our speech does not develop in isolation. The people around us influence what we discuss, what we normalize, and eventually who we become. Some relationships sharpen wisdom, others slowly weaken conviction. Now that we understand the power of words, we must examine the relationships in which those words are spoken. Lesson 31. The people closest to you influence who you become. He who walks with wise men will be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed. Proverbs 13:20. The people around us influence more than our schedule. Over time, they shape what we consider normal, acceptable, important, and possible. We begin to adopt their language, attitudes, habits, and priorities, often without realizing it. If those closest to us continually complain, dishonor others, reject correction, or treat compromise casually, those behaviors may gradually become easier for us to excuse. But when we walk with people who love truth, practice discipline, admit their mistakes, and seek God sincerely, their example strengthens us. This does not mean we should avoid everyone who struggles. Jesus calls us to love, serve, and encourage others. But there is a difference between loving someone and allowing that person to direct your life. Compassion can be offered to everyone. Influence must be granted carefully. Ask yourself whether your closest relationships are helping you become more patient, faithful, honest, and wise, or slowly drawing you away from the person God is calling you to be. Choose companions who can celebrate your growth without encouraging your pride, and who can question your decisions without trying to control you. The people who walk beside you today may influence where you arrive tomorrow. And among all the relationships we develop, few are more valuable than a friend who remains when life becomes difficult. Lesson 32. A true friend remains. During difficulty, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. Proverbs 17:17. Many relationships are easy when life is going well. People often gather around success, celebration, opportunity, and comfort. But adversity reveals which relationships are rooted in genuine love and which depended mainly on convenience. A true friend does not disappear simply because your season has changed. They remain present when there is little they can gain. They listen when your story is complicated. They offer help without turning your pain into a public conversation. This does not mean a faithful friend can solve every problem. Sometimes the greatest gift is simply refusing to let someone suffer alone. Difficult seasons also reveal whether we know how to be that kind of friend. Do we remain available when another person's pain becomes inconvenient? Do we listen patiently or rush to offer explanations? Do we remember people after everyone else has moved on? Real friendship is built through consistency. It is strengthened through ordinary acts of loyalty repeated over time. Cherish those who remained when you had little to offer them, and become the kind of person whose love does not disappear when the celebration ends. Yet a loyal friend does more than comfort us. Sometimes genuine love must also tell us what we do not want to hear. Lesson 33. Sincere friendships. Also correct, open rebuke is better than love carefully concealed. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Proverbs 27:5-6. We often measure friendship by how supported we feel, but Proverbs teaches that sincere friendship also includes correction. A person who agrees with everything we do may make us comfortable without helping us grow. A faithful friend is willing to risk an uncomfortable conversation when they see us moving toward danger. Their words may wound our pride, but their intention is protection. There is a difference between correction and humiliation. Godly correction is not offered to display superiority. It is usually private, specific, respectful, and motivated by concern. Before correcting a friend, examine your heart. Are you trying to restore them or embarrass them? Have you listened carefully? Are you addressing a genuine danger or simply demanding that they share your preference? And when a trusted friend corrects you, resist the urge to defend yourself immediately. Listen. Consider whether God may be using that person to reveal something you have overlooked. Not every criticism is accurate, but a wise person does not reject a message merely because it is uncomfortable. The enemy may flatter us while we move toward destruction. A true friend loves us enough to speak before the damage becomes greater. That kind of correction is possible only where relationships are built upon honesty. Lesson 34. Deep relationships require honesty. Ointment and perfume delight the heart, and the sweetness of a man's friend gives delight by hearty counsel. Proverbs 27:9. A relationship may remain pleasant without honesty, but it cannot become deeply trustworthy. True friendship requires more than shared interests, laughter, or frequent communication. It needs the safety to speak sincerely. Honesty means being able to say, "That hurt me," without turning the conversation into an attack. It means admitting I was wrong, without adding an excuse. It means asking for help before a hidden struggle becomes a public crisis. Many relationships weaken because people expect others to understand feelings they have never expressed. Disappointment grows silently, assumptions replace questions, and distance develops where a truthful conversation might have brought healing. Wisdom does not demand brutal honesty. Truth should never become permission for cruelty. Godly honesty is clear, but also considerate. It chooses the right time, speaks with humility, and allows the other person to respond. Deep relationships require us to be known, not merely admired. That includes allowing trusted people to see uncertainty, weakness, and need. But honesty must be shared with discernment, because not every person who enters our lives should be allowed to shape our direction. Lesson 35. Some companions slowly lead us toward danger. My son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. Do not walk in the way with them. Keep your foot from their path. Proverbs 1:10-15. Dangerous influence rarely begins with a demand to abandon everything we believe. It often begins with one small compromise. A joke we would once have rejected becomes normal. A dishonest action is presented as harmless. A boundary is questioned. A conviction is treated as unnecessary. Little by little, the path changes. Proverbs warns us not only to reject sinful actions, but also to avoid the path that leads toward them. Wisdom pays attention to direction. Where is this relationship taking me? What behavior am I beginning to excuse? What would I never have considered before spending time with this group? Peer pressure does not disappear with age. Adults can still make poor decisions because they want acceptance, fear rejection, or do not want to seem different. But belonging to the wrong group can cost far more than standing alone. You do not need to condemn people in order to establish distance. You can love someone while recognizing that close association with them is weakening your judgment. Leaving a harmful circle may feel lonely at first, but continuing down a destructive path creates a deeper loneliness later. Protect your direction before influence becomes bondage. And just as not everyone should direct your steps, not everyone should receive unrestricted access to your private life. Lesson 36. Not everyone deserves access to your intimacy. Debate your case with your neighbor and do not disclose the secret to another. Proverbs 25:9. Wisdom is not only knowing how to form relationships, it is also knowing how to establish appropriate boundaries within them. Some people can be loved from a distance, but should not be trusted with intimate details. Trust should develop through consistency, character, and time. A person who regularly reveals the secrets of others will probably not protect yours. Someone who uses vulnerability during arguments has shown that deeper access may be unsafe. This does not mean becoming suspicious of everyone. It means allowing trust to grow at the same pace as evidence. Healthy boundaries do not punish people. They clarify responsibility. You can be kind without explaining every personal decision. You can forgive without immediately restoring the same access. You can maintain peace without returning to a pattern that repeatedly causes harm. Even close relationships require wisdom. Before sharing something private, ask whether the person has demonstrated discretion, maturity, and genuine care. Intimacy is valuable because it allows us to be known. That is precisely why it should be protected. When private information is placed in careless hands, it can quickly become gossip. And gossip has the power to keep conflict alive long after it should have ended. Lesson 37. Gossip keeps conflicts alive. Where there is no wood, the fire goes out, and where there is no talebearer, strife ceases. Proverbs 26:20. A fire cannot continue without fuel. In the same way, many conflicts would eventually weaken if people stopped carrying the story from one conversation to another. Gossip keeps an offense active. Each retelling adds emotion, interpretation, and sometimes details that were never part of the original event. People who were not involved begin choosing sides, and a private disagreement becomes a public division. Proverbs gives us a simple principle: remove the fuel, and the fire begins to die. When someone brings you a complaint about another person, ask whether they have spoken directly to them. Do not confuse receiving information with receiving responsibility. You do not have to carry every conflict someone places before you. Refusing gossip may initially disappoint the person who wanted agreement, but it can protect everyone involved from greater damage. We should also examine why we sometimes enjoy hearing negative information. Does it make us feel important? Does another person's failure make us feel superior? Are we calling it concern when it is actually curiosity? Wise people do not keep conflict alive for entertainment. They encourage truth, direct communication, forgiveness, and peace. Because when negative stories are repeatedly fed, ordinary conflict can harden into something much more destructive: hatred. Lesson 38. Hatred amplifies offenses. Hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all sins. The Proverbs 10:12. Hatred does not allow an offense to remain small. It revisits the injury, adds new accusations, interprets every action negatively, and searches for more reasons to remain angry. When hatred governs the heart, even neutral behavior begins to appear threatening. Old wounds are brought into new conversations. Past failures are used as permanent evidence against another person. Conflict grows because the heart no longer desires understanding. It desires judgment. Proverbs says, hatred stirs up strife. It continually brings what might have settled back to the surface. This does not mean serious wrongdoing should be ignored. Wisdom confronts abuse, dishonesty, betrayal, and injustice. Appropriate consequences may be necessary, but hatred goes beyond seeking truth or protection. It wants the other person to suffer. That desire eventually harms the person carrying it. When resentment repeatedly reopens the wound, the offense continues controlling the present. Ask God to show you whether you are seeking resolution or simply gathering more evidence for anger. You may need boundaries. You may need time. You may need help processing what happened, but you do not need to give hatred permanent residence in your heart. Where hatred magnifies every fault, love responds differently. Lesson 39. Love knows when to cover a fault. He who covers a transgression seeks love, but he who repeats a matter separates friends. Proverbs 17:9. Love does not expose every mistake. There are offenses that require confrontation, especially when harm continues or truth and safety are at stake. But there are also smaller failures that wisdom can forgive without turning them into repeated accusations. To cover a fault does not mean hiding abuse, protecting deception, or pretending serious sin does not matter. It means refusing to publicize someone's weakness unnecessarily. It means not repeating a forgiven offense every time conflict returns. Some people apologize but never truly release the matter. They store the failure as a weapon for the next argument. That is not forgiveness. Love protects dignity while pursuing restoration. Before repeating what someone did, ask what purpose the repetition serves. Will it protect someone? Will it bring necessary accountability? Or will it merely embarrass the person and keep the wound open? If the matter has been addressed, forgiven, and corrected, allow it to remain in the past. We all need grace that does not deny our failures but refuses to define us permanently by them. Relationships become stronger when people know they can acknowledge mistakes, make amends, and grow without having their worst moments continually displayed. And when friendship combines loyalty, honesty, correction, discretion, and grace, it becomes one of God's instruments for shaping our character. Lesson 40. Wise relationships make us better. As iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the countenance of his friend. Proverbs 27:17. Iron sharpens iron through contact and friction. In the same way, meaningful relationships do not always make life easier, but they can make us wiser, stronger, and more mature. The right people challenge careless thinking. They encourage discipline when motivation disappears. They remind us of truth when emotion distorts our vision. They do not compete with our growth, they contribute to it. A sharpening relationship is not one person constantly correcting another. Both people remain humble enough to learn. Both offer encouragement and accountability. Both are willing to speak and listen. Consider the influence you bring into the lives of others. Do you sharpen their faith or strengthen their fears? Do you encourage responsibility or excuse destructive patterns? Do you celebrate their progress or feel threatened by it? Godly relationships should help us move closer to truth, not merely feel comfortable in our current condition. This has shown us that companionship shapes direction. True friends remain in adversity, speak honest correction, and create space for trust. Wisdom also recognizes harmful influence, establishes boundaries, rejects gossip, resists hatred, and protects others through grace. But even the best relationships cannot compensate for a character that remains uncontrolled. A wise friend may warn us, yet we must choose whether to listen. Someone may speak gently, yet we must decide whether pride will rule our response. Relationships can reveal our weaknesses, but only personal discipline can begin correcting them. We have examined the heart, our words, and the people who influence us. Now Proverbs turns toward the person we must learn to govern before we can lead anything else, ourselves. Lesson 41. Controlling yourself is a greater victory. He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who takes a city. Proverbs 16:32. The world often celebrates power that can be seen. It admires people who command armies, lead organizations, overcome opponents, or achieve what others thought impossible. But Proverbs identifies a greater victory: ruling your own spirit. It is possible to influence thousands of people and still be controlled by anger, fear, pride, jealousy, or appetite. A person may appear strong publicly while remaining powerless before private impulses. Anyone can react when provoked. Self-control requires greater strength. It means refusing to let temporary emotion create permanent consequences. It means choosing obedience when temptation promises immediate satisfaction. It means remaining calm when pride demands that you prove yourself. Ruling your spirit does not mean denying emotion. It means placing emotion under wisdom. You can acknowledge anger without allowing it to choose your words. You can experience fear without letting fear determine your direction. Some of life's greatest victories will never be recognized by others. The argument you chose not to continue, the temptation you resisted, or the offense you refused to repay. Before attempting to control situations or people, learn to govern yourself. And one of the clearest signs of that inner strength is patience. Lesson 42. Patience prevents decisions we later regret. The discretion of a man makes him slow to anger, and his glory is to overlook a transgression. Proverbs 19:11. Anger creates urgency. It tells us that we must answer immediately, defend ourselves completely, and make the other person understand our position now. Patience creates distance between emotion and action. That distance allows us to recognize what anger may be hiding. Sometimes beneath anger is embarrassment, fear, disappointment, or wounded pride. If we react before identifying the deeper issue, we may attack the wrong problem. Proverbs says, discretion makes a person slow to anger. Wisdom does not ask only what happened. It also asks what response will produce the best result. There are offenses that require a conversation, but not every offense requires a confrontation. Some misunderstandings can be clarified gently. Some careless remarks can be released without turning them into lasting conflict. Overlooking an offense does not mean accepting abuse or ignoring repeated harm. It means refusing to make every irritation a battle. Patience may require waiting until tomorrow before answering. It may mean praying before sending a message or allowing another person to explain before reaching a conclusion. A delayed response is often wiser than a sincere apology for words that should never have been spoken. But when patience is rejected, anger does more than damage one moment. It begins multiplying mistakes. Lesson 43. Uncontrolled anger multiplies errors. An angry man stirs up strife, and a furious man abounds in transgression. Proverbs 29:22. Uncontrolled anger rarely creates only one problem. One accusation leads to another. A disagreement becomes an attack on character. Old failures are brought into a new conflict. Words become harsher, and soon the original issue is buried beneath additional wounds. Proverbs says a furious person abounds in transgression because anger weakens restraint. In that state, people may exaggerate, insult, threaten, reveal private information, or make decisions they would never make with a calm mind. Anger itself can alert us that something matters. Injustice, betrayal, or disrespect may require a response. But anger is a poor master. When you feel anger rising, do not ask only whether it is justified. Ask whether it is still under control. Are you seeking a solution or punishment? Are you speaking to be understood or to cause pain? Can this conversation continue without creating greater damage? Sometimes wisdom requires stepping away until clarity returns. Repeated explosions should not be excused as personality. What repeatedly harms others must be addressed honestly through prayer, accountability, changed habits, and when necessary, professional help. Strength is not proved by how intensely you express anger. It is revealed by whether anger can command you, and beneath many angry reactions lies an even quieter danger: pride. Lesson 44. Pride often appears before a fall. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Proverbs 16-18. Pride is dangerous because it can remain hidden while convincing us that we are secure. It tells us we are beyond correction, more capable than others, and unlikely to make the mistakes that have ruined someone else. That confidence may feel like strength, but it often removes the protections that humility provides. A proud person stops asking questions. Warnings are dismissed. Success is credited entirely to personal ability, and weakness is hidden because admitting need feels unacceptable. Then the fall comes, not always through one dramatic event, but sometimes through a series of decisions that no one was permitted to question. Proverbs does not condemn healthy confidence. We can recognize abilities, celebrate progress, and accept responsibility. The danger begins when confidence no longer leaves room for dependence on God. Pride says, "I cannot be wrong." Wisdom says, "I must remain teachable." Pride says, "I achieved this alone." Wisdom remembers every opportunity, gift, person, and act of grace that made progress possible. Success can become more spiritually dangerous than difficulty if it convinces us that we no longer need guidance. Stay humble in seasons of achievement. Listen carefully when others raise concerns. Remember that the higher a person rises, the more destructive a fall may become. Pride prepares the fall, but humility prepares another path. Lesson 45. Humility prepares the way for honor. Before destruction, the heart of a man is haughty, and before honor is humility. Proverbs 18:12. Humility is often misunderstood as thinking poorly of ourselves, but biblical humility is not self-hatred. It is seeing ourselves truthfully. A humble person can recognize strengths without believing those strengths make them superior. They can admit weakness without believing weakness removes their worth. Humility allows us to serve without needing recognition, apologize without protecting our image, and learn from people who may know more than we do. Proverbs says humility comes before honor. This does not mean every humble act will receive public reward. It means humility develops the character capable of carrying honor without being destroyed by it. People who seek recognition before developing character may gain influence they are not prepared to manage. But humility prepares the heart. It teaches us to value responsibility more than attention and faithfulness more than applause. In God's kingdom, the path upward often begins by becoming willing to take the lower place. Do not waste energy trying to convince everyone of your importance. Let consistency, integrity, and service speak over time. Honor pursued directly often becomes pride. Honor received through humility can become an opportunity to serve. And because humility recognizes that there is always more to learn, it protects us from the arrogance that closes the mind. Lesson 46. Arrogance prevents us from learning. Do you see a man wise in his own eyes? There is more hope for a fool than for him. Proverbs 26:12. Few conditions are more difficult to correct than the belief that correction is unnecessary. A person who knows little may still learn if they recognize their need, but someone convinced of their own wisdom rejects the very help that could protect them. Arrogance turns every disagreement into evidence that others do not understand. It interprets questions as challenges and advice as interference. Eventually, people stop speaking honestly because they know their concerns will be dismissed. That silence can make an arrogant person feel confirmed, when in reality, they have simply made truth unwelcome. Proverbs says, "There is more hope for a fool than for someone wise in their own eyes." The statement is severe because self-deception blocks growth at its source. Examine how you respond when someone questions your judgment. Do you listen before defending yourself? Can you admit that another person may see what you missed? Are you more interested in discovering truth or preserving the appearance of being right? Intelligence does not eliminate the need for humility. In fact, greater knowledge should make us more aware of how much remains unknown. Remain curious, ask questions, learn from people whose experiences differ from yours. A closed mind protects pride, but a teachable spirit continues growing. Lesson 47. A teachable person continues to grow. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be still wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. Proverbs 9:9. Wisdom is not demonstrated by having nothing left to learn. It is demonstrated by the willingness to keep learning. Proverbs presents a surprising contrast. The wise person becomes wiser because they receive instruction. Their wisdom does not make them resistant, it makes them receptive. A teachable person can learn from success and failure, from older and younger people, from encouragement and correction. They do not assume every familiar subject has nothing new to offer. This attitude keeps life from becoming stagnant. After a mistake, they ask, "What must I do differently?" After success, they ask, "What made this work, and how can I remain faithful?" During conflict, they ask, "What is this revealing about me?" Teachable people do not need to agree with every opinion. They evaluate counsel carefully and compare it with truth, but they listen long enough to understand before deciding what should be accepted. Growth requires the humility to become a beginner more than once. There will always be areas where experience is limited and habits must change. Do not let age, position, or past success convince you that learning has ended. The moment we stop receiving wisdom, we begin relying only on what we already know. And Proverbs warns that rejecting correction does not merely stop growth, it actively harms the person who refuses it. Lesson 48. Rejecting correction harms us. He who disdains instruction despises his own soul, but he who heeds rebuke gets understanding. Proverbs 15:32. Correction may feel like an attack against us, but wise correction is often working for us. Proverbs says the person who rejects instruction harms their own soul because they refuse the opportunity to recognize danger before consequences grow. When correction comes, our first instinct may be to explain why our situation is different. We focus on the other person's flaws, question their motives, or become offended by their tone. Sometimes the delivery is poor, but even a poorly delivered message may contain truth worth considering. Wisdom separates the value of the correction from the imperfection of the person offering it. Ask, what part of this should I examine honestly? A repeated warning deserves particular attention. When several trustworthy people identify the same concern, rejecting them all may reveal more about our pride than their misunderstanding. Receiving correction does not mean living under constant shame. It means allowing truth to produce adjustment. The goal is not to feel condemned, but to become wiser. Thank those who care enough to speak honestly. Reflect before responding. Make changes when changes are needed. Correction becomes fruitful when it leads to ownership. And ownership begins when we stop hiding our mistakes. Lesson 49. Admitting an error requires more strength than hiding it. He who covers his sins will not prosper, but whoever confesses and forsakes them will have mercy. Proverbs 28:13. The instinct to hide failure is as old as human sin. We fear embarrassment, rejection, consequences, or the loss of a reputation we have worked hard to build. So we minimize what happened, shift responsibility, conceal details, or pretend the problem no longer exists. But hidden wrongdoing rarely remains inactive. It affects peace, relationships, decisions, and our ability to live honestly before God. Proverbs teaches that covering sin prevents true progress. What remains hidden cannot be properly confronted, repaired, or forsaken. Confession requires courage, because it removes the image we were trying to protect. Yet confession also opens the door to mercy. To confess is more than saying, "I made a mistake." It means agreeing with the truth about what happened, and to forsake means turning away from the pattern rather than merely regretting its consequences. A sincere apology names the harm, accepts responsibility, and begins making changes. Do not confuse exposure with destruction. Sometimes what feels like the collapse of an image becomes the beginning of an honest life. God's mercy does not excuse sin. It frees us to confront it without believing failure must define our future. The person who admits wrongdoing may lose temporary admiration, but can begin rebuilding something more valuable. Integrity. Lesson 50, integrity guides you when no one can advise you. The integrity of the upright will guide them, but the perversity of the unfaithful will destroy them. Proverbs 11:3. Not every decision will come with clear advice. There will be moments when no trusted person is nearby, when rules do not address every detail, and when no one else would know whether you chose what was right. In those moments, integrity becomes a guide. Integrity means that our private conduct agrees with the values we profess publicly. It refuses dishonesty, even when dishonesty would be profitable. It keeps promises when breaking them would be convenient. It chooses what is right, even when there is no applause and little chance of being discovered. A person without integrity must continually manage appearances. They remember different versions of the story, hide evidence, and fear exposure. The upright person may still make mistakes, but they do not build life upon deception. Integrity simplifies decisions because some choices have already been settled. When honesty is a conviction, manipulation is no longer an option. When faithfulness is a commitment, temptation cannot be evaluated only by convenience. Ask yourself who you are when accountability disappears. That private person is shaping the public life you will eventually live. Character is built through repeated choices, many of which seem small at the time. So far, Proverbs has shown us that wisdom is not merely knowing what is right. Wisdom requires the character to practice what is right when obedience is difficult. Pride is wounded, emotions are intense, and no one is watching. But character is tested through choices. In the second half of this journey, we will examine decisions, work, money, family, adversity, and purpose. These lessons will show how wisdom moves from inner conviction into the practical responsibilities that shape our future. And some of them may help us recognize a dangerous path before its consequences become visible. We begin with the decisions that quietly determine where life is going. Lesson 51. Before deciding, consider where the path leads. Ponder the path of your feet and let all your ways be established. Proverbs 4:26. Every decision places our feet on a path. At first, that path may appear harmless. One step seems too small to matter, but repeated choices create direction, and direction eventually becomes destination. Proverbs tells us to ponder the path, not merely the next step. Before deciding, look beyond the immediate reward and ask where the choice is likely to lead. What will this habit produce if it continues for a year? What kind of person will this relationship encourage you to become? What responsibilities will accompany this opportunity? A choice may provide temporary relief while creating long-term difficulty. Avoiding one uncomfortable conversation may preserve peace today, but allow resentment to grow. Accepting an attractive opportunity may bring recognition while quietly removing time from what matters most. Wisdom does not evaluate decisions only by how they feel at the beginning. It considers where they are going. You may not know every detail of the future, but you can often recognize a direction. If a path repeatedly requires dishonesty, secrecy, compromise, or the abandonment of wise counsel, do not ignore what those signs are telling you. Pause before you proceed. Prayerfully examine the likely fruit. It is easier to change direction before traveling far than to rebuild life after arriving somewhere you never intended to go. And Proverbs warns that some paths are especially dangerous because they appear completely right at first. Lesson 52. What appears right can end badly. There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. Proverbs 14:12. Not every convincing path is a wise one. Some decisions feel right because they agree with what we already want. Desire can make warning signs seem unimportant and resistance appear unreasonable. We may say, "I have peace about it," when what we really mean is, "This is the outcome I prefer." Proverbs reminds us that sincerity does not guarantee accuracy. A person can genuinely believe they are making the right decision and still be moving toward painful consequences. This is why feelings alone cannot become our compass. Emotions provide information, but they do not always provide direction. Excitement may overlook risk. Fear may exaggerate danger. Loneliness may make an unhealthy relationship appear necessary. Before trusting what seems right, compare it with what God has revealed to be right. Does the decision agree with Scripture? Does it require you to hide important details? Are you ignoring repeated warnings from people whose wisdom you previously trusted? What kind of fruit has this path produced in others? Wisdom is willing to question even a deeply desired outcome. Sometimes God protects us by disturbing the confidence we placed in our own plan. Do not resent every delay or closed door. What feels like interruption may be mercy. And because our own perspective can mislead us, wise decisions often require insight beyond our own. Lesson 53, Seeking Counsel, reduces avoidable errors. Where there is no counsel, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. Proverbs 11:14. Some mistakes cannot be prevented because life contains uncertainty, but many others could be avoided if we were willing to ask for counsel before acting. Wise counsel brings another perspective into the decision. Someone else may recognize a danger we missed, ask a question we avoided, or notice that our emotions are influencing our judgment. Seeking advice does not mean surrendering responsibility for the final choice. It means refusing to assume that one person can see every side of a situation. Choose counselors carefully. The loudest opinion is not always the wisest. Advice should come from people who demonstrate integrity, understand the situation, and care more about truth than about pleasing you. Do not seek only those who will confirm what you have already decided. That is not counsel, it is permission. Share the complete situation, not merely the details that make your preferred choice appear reasonable. Counsel can protect us only when we are honest enough to receive it. There is no shame in saying, "I need another perspective." The shame is often found later, when pride forces us to repair consequences that humility could have prevented. And when a decision carries greater weight, Proverbs encourages us to seek more than one trustworthy voice. Lesson 54. Many counselors can strengthen a plan. Without counsel, plans go awry, but in the multitude of counselors, they are established. Proverbs 15:22. Good intentions are not enough to create a strong plan. A plan must also account for timing, resources, responsibilities, risks, and consequences that may not be immediately visible. Different counselors can strengthen different parts of a decision. One person may understand finances. Another may recognize relational consequences. Someone with experience may identify obstacles that enthusiasm overlooked. The purpose is not to collect endless opinions until confusion replaces clarity. Nor should we allow everyone to influence decisions they are not qualified to understand. Wisdom seeks relevant counsel. It listens for patterns. If several mature people independently raise the same concern, pay attention. At the same time, no human counselor is perfect. Advice must still be evaluated through prayer, scripture, and personal responsibility before God. A plan becomes stronger when it survives honest questions. What could go wrong? What will this require from the people around me? Am I prepared for the cost, not merely attracted to the reward? What happens if progress takes longer than expected? Counsel does not weaken vision. It helps vision become realistic, responsible, and sustainable. But even strong counsel can be ignored when emotion becomes louder than wisdom. Lesson 55. Do not make important decisions ruled by emotion. Also, it is not good for a soul to be without knowledge, and he sins who hastens with his feet. Proverbs 19:2. Emotion can create momentum before understanding is complete. We become excited and commit too quickly. We feel offended and end a relationship suddenly. We become afraid and abandon an opportunity before examining it carefully. Proverbs connects haste with a lack of knowledge. When emotion is intense, we often act before gathering enough information. This does not mean emotions should be ignored. They may reveal that something important is happening, but they should be examined before they are obeyed. Ask yourself, what is driving the urgency? Are you trying to escape discomfort? Are you afraid the opportunity will disappear if you pause? Are you making a permanent decision based on a temporary feeling? Important choices deserve a calm mind. When possible, avoid major decisions at the peak of anger, fear, exhaustion, or excitement. Sleep, pray, gather facts, and allow the emotional intensity to settle. A decision that remains wise after the emotion changes is more trustworthy than one that depends upon maintaining the same feeling. Patience does not mean endless delay. It means refusing to let urgency become your master. Because when haste becomes a pattern, it weakens judgment and often produces the very delays we were trying to avoid. Lesson 56. Haste can lead us away from good judgment. The plans of the diligent lead surely to plenty, but those of everyone who is hasty surely to poverty. Proverbs 21:5. Haste promises speed, but often creates additional work. A rushed decision may require correction. A hurried agreement may contain responsibilities we failed to notice. A shortcut may save time initially and produce much greater loss later. Proverbs contrasts haste with diligence. Diligence is not slowness for its own sake. It is steady, thoughtful effort, guided by preparation. The diligent person counts the cost, organizes resources, and continues working after initial excitement disappears. The hasty person is attracted to immediate results. This applies to more than money. Relationships built too quickly may create trust before character has been tested. Goals pursued without preparation may collapse under pressure. Words spoken before facts are confirmed can damage credibility. Speed is not always progress. Sometimes the fastest way forward is to slow down long enough to choose correctly. Ask whether your urgency comes from wisdom or impatience. Are you trying to skip a process that is necessary for growth? Are you demanding immediate results from something that requires consistent effort? God may accomplish something suddenly, but we should not use that possibility to justify careless planning. Diligence prepares responsibly while remaining dependent upon Him, and that dependence becomes clear when we commit our plans to God. Lesson 57. Commit your projects to God. Commit your works to the Lord, and your thoughts will be established. The Proverbs 16:3. To commit something to God means more than asking Him to bless what we have already chosen. It means placing the work, motives, methods, timing, and outcome under His authority. We often want God's assistance without surrendering control. We present Him with a finished plan and ask for approval. But genuine commitment allows Him to correct the plan, delay it, redirect it, or close the door entirely. Before beginning a project, ask what purpose is driving it. Is it rooted in service, stewardship, and obedience? Or is it being fueled by comparison, insecurity, and the need to prove your worth. Committing your work to God brings order to your thoughts because surrender removes the pressure to control every result. You are still responsible to prepare, work diligently, and make wise adjustments. But your identity no longer depends entirely upon success. If the plan grows, you remain humble. If it changes, you remain teachable. If it fails, you can learn without believing your life has lost its purpose. Invite God into the process from the beginning, not only when complications arise. Pray over the decisions, the people involved, the methods used, and the effect the work may have on others. A project committed to God should be pursued in a way that reflects His character. And even after we have prayed, planned, and worked, we must remember that the final direction still belongs to Him. Lesson 58. We can plan, but God directs the outcome. A man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. Proverbs 16:9. Planning is not a sign of weak faith. Proverbs repeatedly encourages diligence, preparation, and wise consideration. But it also reminds us that our plans do not give us control over the future. We may choose a direction, but unexpected events can alter the route. An opportunity closes, a relationship changes, a delay forces us to reconsider the timeline. What appeared to be a setback may move us towards something we could not have planned. This tension requires both responsibility and surrender. We should not become passive and say, "God will do everything," while refusing to prepare. Nor should we become so attached to our plan that every change feels like failure. Hold plans with open hands. Work faithfully with the information you have, but remain attentive to God's direction. Sometimes He redirects us through clear conviction. At other times, He uses circumstances, counsel, or responsibilities we did not expect. A change path does not always mean you made a mistake. It may mean God is guiding the next step. Do not confuse faithfulness with rigid attachment to one outcome. The goal is not to force life to follow our original map. The goal is to remain obedient wherever God leads. This is why we must speak about the future with humility. Lesson 59. Do not speak about tomorrow as though it is guaranteed. Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring forth. Proverbs 27:1. Tomorrow feels certain because it appears on the calendar. We make appointments, set goals, and speak confidently about what we will accomplish. Planning is wise, but Proverbs warns against presumption. We do not control what one day may bring. This truth is not meant to produce fear. It is meant to produce humility and gratitude. Make plans, but do not treat the future as a possession. Say in your heart, "If the Lord allows, I will do this." Do not delay every meaningful act until a more convenient tomorrow. Express gratitude today. Offer the apology today. Begin the responsibility you have repeatedly postponed. Spend time with the people God has entrusted to you. Some people live so completely for the future that they fail to honor the present. They sacrifice current relationships for achievements they hope to enjoy later. Others fear the future so deeply that they refuse to plan at all. Wisdom avoids both extremes. It prepares responsibly while recognizing dependence upon God. Tomorrow is a place for plans. Today is the place for faithfulness. And because the future is uncertain, prudence teaches us to recognize danger while there is still time to respond. Lesson 60. Considering consequences is part of prudence. A prudent man foresees evil and hides himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. Proverbs 22:3. Prudence sees danger before danger becomes unavoidable. It notices warning signs, evaluates risk, and takes appropriate action. The simple person continues forward, not because the path is safe, but because thinking about consequences feels inconvenient. Prudence is not constant fear or the belief that something bad is always about to happen. It is the ability to recognize reasonable danger and respond before the cost becomes greater. A prudent person establishes boundaries before temptation grows strong. They prepare financially before a crisis. They address a small problem before it becomes a major conflict. They do not wait for consequences to prove that a warning was valid. Many painful outcomes begin with signs that were repeatedly dismissed. This probably will not become a problem. I can stop whenever I want. No one will find out. I will deal with it later. Wisdom challenges those assumptions. Ask what could reasonably result from the path you are taking. What warning have you been minimizing? What preparation would reduce unnecessary harm? Faith does not require us to ignore danger. Noah trusted God and still built the ark. Prudence acts responsibly and then places what remains beyond human control into God's hands. These 10 lessons have shown us that decisions shape direction. We must examine where a path leads, question what only seems right, seek wise counsel, resist emotional haste, commit our work to God, remain flexible when He redirects us, and consider consequences before they arrive. But wise decisions mean little if they are never followed by faithful action. A person may understand the right path and still remain motionless. Good intentions can disappear beneath procrastination, inconsistency, and lack of discipline. The future is not shaped only by the choices we make once. It is also shaped by the responsibilities we fulfill repeatedly. That brings us to the next practical area of wisdom: how we work, persevere, and manage what God has placed in our hands. Lesson 61. Diligence opens doors. The hand of the diligent will rule, but the lazy man will be put to forced labor. Proverbs 12:24. Diligence is the willingness to keep doing what is necessary, even after excitement has disappeared. Many people begin with enthusiasm. They make plans, announce goals, and imagine the result. But progress is usually determined by what happens after the beginning, when the work becomes repetitive, unnoticed, or difficult. Proverbs teaches that diligence creates opportunities. A diligent person becomes dependable. They complete what they begin, arrive prepared, and take responsibility without needing constant supervision. Over time, that faithfulness builds trust. People are more willing to offer responsibility to someone who has already demonstrated that smaller responsibilities will be handled well. Diligence does not guarantee immediate recognition. There may be seasons when your work appears invisible, but unseen faithfulness is still forming your character and preparing you for future opportunities. Do not despise ordinary responsibilities. The task that seems small may be teaching the discipline required for something greater. Work carefully when no one is watching. Finish what you promised. Improve what has been placed in your hands. Diligence does not require extraordinary talent. It requires consistency. And while diligence grows through repeated choices, laziness often begins through concessions that appear too small to matter. Lesson 62. Laziness begins with small concessions. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall your poverty come on you like a prowler, and your need like an armed man. Proverbs 6:10-11. Laziness rarely begins with the decision to abandon every responsibility. It usually begins with a little more delay, a little more comfort, one more excuse, one task postponed until tomorrow. None of these choices appears serious by itself, but repeated concessions become habits, and habits quietly shape the future. Rest is necessary and biblical. The problem is not sleep or recovery. The problem is allowing comfort to become more important than responsibility. Laziness often disguises itself as waiting for motivation. We say we will begin when we feel more inspired, confident, or prepared, but motivation is unreliable. Discipline begins the task, even when feelings have not cooperated. Pay attention to the small delays you repeatedly excuse. Is there a responsibility that grows more difficult each time you postpone it? is comfort-consuming time that should be invested in something meaningful. You do not need to repair everything in one day. Begin with the next faithful action. Get up, make the call, complete the unfinished task. Small acts of discipline can reverse the direction created by small acts of neglect, because what is repeatedly postponed does not disappear, it accumulates. Lesson 63. What we postpone eventually accumulates. I went by the field of the lazy man, and by the vineyard of the man devoid of understanding, and there it was, all overgrown with thorns. Proverbs 24:30-31. Neglect leaves visible evidence. The field in this proverb was not ruined in one afternoon. It became overgrown slowly, because necessary work was repeatedly left undone. One weed was ignored, one repair was postponed, one day of neglect became another, until the vineyard could no longer produce what it was created to provide. Many areas of life deteriorate in the same way. Unpaid responsibilities accumulate. Small misunderstandings become distance. A neglected skill weakens. A spiritual habit disappears because one missed day quietly becomes many. We often underestimate the cost of leaving something unattended. The task may appear manageable today, but neglect adds complexity. What could have been handled with a small effort may later require major restoration. Look carefully at the areas you are responsible to maintain. What is beginning to become overgrown? What problem have you been hoping will solve itself? Wisdom acts while the issue is still small. Do not become discouraged by the entire field. Begin clearing one section. Consistent maintenance is less dramatic than emergency repair, but it is far more effective. The future is protected through ordinary attention given before the damage becomes obvious. And this is why steady effort usually produces more than occasional bursts of intense motivation. Lesson 64. Consistent effort produces more than temporary impulses. The soul of a lazy man desires and has nothing, but the soul of the diligent shall be made rich. Proverbs 13:4. Desire alone does not create results. Many people genuinely want growth, stability, knowledge, stronger relationships, and a deeper life with God. But Proverbs draws a distinction between wanting and doing. The lazy person desires the outcome without accepting the process required to reach it. The diligent person connects desire with repeated action. A powerful beginning may feel productive, but consistency carries us farther. Reading once for several hours does not replace a regular habit of learning. One intense day of work cannot continually compensate for weeks of neglect. Progress often appears unimpressive while it is happening. One disciplined choice may seem too small to matter, but when repeated, small choices become skill, strength, trust, and maturity. Do not depend entirely on inspiration. Create routines that help you remain faithful when energy changes. Set realistic goals. Remove unnecessary distractions. Decide in advance when and how the work will be done. Some days will produce more than others. The goal is not perfection, but continuity. A person who advances slowly and consistently may eventually surpass someone who moves quickly only when motivation is high. Desire points toward what we value. Diligence turns that desire into movement. But consistency must also be accompanied by care, because work performed carelessly can weaken the very result we are trying to build. Lesson 65. Careless work impoverishes the result. He who has a slack hand becomes poor, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. Proverbs 10:4. A slack hand does not always refuse to work. Sometimes it works without attention, preparation, or concern for quality. The task is completed only enough to say it is finished. Details are ignored. Mistakes are left for someone else to correct. This attitude may save effort temporarily, but it reduces trust and opportunity over time. Careless work creates hidden costs. Someone must repair what was poorly done. A customer loses confidence. A promise must be explained. A task that should have been completed once must be repeated. Diligence asks more than, "Did I finish?" It asks, "Was I faithful with what was entrusted to me?" This does not require perfectionism. Perfectionism can delay progress by making every small detail feel equally important. Excellence is different. It gives appropriate care to the responsibility without allowing fear to prevent completion. Before considering a task finished, pause and review it. Is anything missing? Would you be comfortable placing your name upon the result? Have you given the level of care the responsibility deserves? Even ordinary work can become an expression of integrity. When we work carefully, we respect the people who will depend upon the result. And over time, that kind of excellence becomes visible. Lesson 66. Excellence can bring you before influential people. Do you see a man who excels in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before unknown men. Proverbs 22:29. Excellence attracts trust. A person who develops skill, works carefully, and remains dependable often receives opportunities that cannot be gained through self-promotion alone. Proverbs says, "The skilled worker may stand before kings." The principle is not that everyone who works hard will become famous. It is that excellence creates access. Prepared people are ready when opportunity arrives. They do not wait until a door opens to begin developing the ability needed to walk through it. There may be a skill you need to strengthen, a weakness you need to address, or a standard of work you need to raise. Do not improve only when someone important is watching. Excellence becomes authentic when it is practiced consistently. At the same time, skill must remain joined with character. Talent may open a door, but integrity determines whether trust remains after you enter. Do not pursue excellence merely to be admired. Pursue it because responsible work honors God and serves others well. You may not control who notices your effort or when recognition comes, but you can control whether you are preparing faithfully today. And preparation requires more than performing tasks. It also requires understanding the condition of everything placed under our care. Lesson 67. Know the condition of what you manage. Be diligent to know the state of your flocks and attend to your herds. Proverbs 27:23. Good stewardship requires attention. In the world of Proverbs, flocks and herds represented livelihood, provision, and responsibility. A wise owner could not manage them from a distance without knowing their condition. The same principle applies today. We cannot manage well what we refuse to examine. We should know the condition of our finances, work, health, commitments, relationships, and spiritual habits. Ignoring reality does not protect us from it. A problem may feel less uncomfortable when we avoid looking, but neglect usually allows it to grow. Responsible management asks practical questions. What is working? What is weakening? What requires repair? Where are resources being wasted? What responsibility have I assumed but failed to monitor? Attention allows correction while change is still possible. This also applies to people entrusted to our leadership. Good leaders do not only measure results, they understand pressures, needs, and obstacles affecting those they serve. Stewardship is not control, it is informed care. Take regular time to review what God has placed in your hands. Make adjustments before a small weakness becomes a crisis. Knowledge creates the opportunity for wise action. But awareness without action becomes another form of delay. Lesson 68. Words without action produce little. In all labor there is profit, but idle chatter leads only to poverty. Proverbs 14:23. Talking about work can create the illusion of progress. We discuss plans, explain intentions, imagine outcomes, and tell others what we hope to accomplish. But Proverbs reminds us that profit comes through labor, not through words alone. There is a time for planning and communication, yet eventually the task must begin. Some people remain trapped in preparation because action feels risky. As long as the idea remains only an idea, it cannot fail. Once work begins, weakness becomes visible and adjustment becomes necessary. But no meaningful result is created without movement. Do not wait until every uncertainty disappears. Begin with what you know. Take the first responsible step and allow experience to reveal what must be improved. Be careful also about announcing goals too early. Public approval can sometimes provide the emotional reward of achievement before the work has been done. Let progress speak. A small, completed task has more value than a perfect plan that never leaves the imagination. Ask yourself whether you have been discussing something that now requires action. Prayer should lead toward obedience. Planning should lead toward execution. Intention should become responsibility. And when action becomes consistent, it begins revealing whether our character is truly faithful. Lesson 69. Faithfulness in ordinary responsibilities reveals character. A faithful man will abound with blessings, but he who hastens to be rich will not go unpunished. Proverbs 28:20. Faithfulness is usually demonstrated in ordinary places. It appears in promises kept, responsibilities completed, money handled honestly, and work performed consistently. These actions may not attract immediate attention, but they reveal character. Proverbs contrasts faithfulness with the desire to gain quickly. A person who is in a hurry for success may begin viewing boundaries as obstacles. Shortcuts become tempting because steady progress feels too slow. But rapid gain achieved without wisdom often carries hidden consequences. Faithfulness accepts the process. It continues when progress is small, recognition is absent, and results take longer than expected. A faithful person does not change values whenever a faster opportunity appears. They understand that how something is gained matters as much as what is gained. God can entrust more to the person who has shown care with what they already possess. Before asking for a larger opportunity, examine the responsibilities already in your hands. Are you handling them with consistency? Are your words dependable? Can people trust what you promise? Faithfulness does not require a perfect record. It requires honesty, perseverance, and the willingness to correct failure. The person who remains faithful may appear to be taking the slower road, but Proverbs reveals that the road promising immediate ease may eventually become the hardest path of all. Lesson 70. The easy path can become the hardest one. The way of the lazy man is like a hedge of thorns, but the way of the upright is a highway. Proverbs 15:19. Laziness often appears to offer the easier path. It avoids effort, postpones discomfort, and chooses immediate relief. But Proverbs says that path eventually becomes like a hedge of thorns. Neglected responsibilities create obstacles. Lost time reduces options. Unfinished work produces pressure. What once seemed easier becomes increasingly painful to navigate. Discipline may feel difficult at the beginning, but it often makes the future easier. Saving requires sacrifice today, but creates stability later. Having an honest conversation may feel uncomfortable now, but prevent years of resentment. Learning a skill demands effort, yet it may open opportunities that remain closed to the unprepared. The upright path is described as a highway, not because it contains no difficulty, but because wise choices remove many unnecessary obstacles. We cannot avoid every hardship, but we can avoid adding preventable suffering through procrastination, carelessness, and neglect. When facing a responsibility, do not ask only, what feels easiest now? Ask, which path will produce greater freedom later? Temporary comfort can become long-term limitation. Temporary discipline can become long-term strength. These 10 lessons have shown us that diligent work opens doors. while small acts of laziness accumulate into larger problems. Consistency turns desire into progress. Careful work builds trust. Excellence prepares us for opportunity. Stewardship requires attention, and words must eventually become action. Faithfulness is not formed through one extraordinary effort. It is formed through ordinary responsibilities handled well, again and again. But work reveals more than our discipline. It also produces resources, and the way we pursue, manage, protect, and share those resources reveals another part of our character. Money can become a useful servant, but it becomes a dangerous master. It can support families, meet needs, and advance good work. It can also awaken greed, anxiety, comparison, and compromise. For that reason, Proverbs does not separate financial wisdom from spiritual wisdom. The next lessons will show us how to honor God with what we possess, without allowing possessions to control our hearts. Lesson 71. Honor God with what you receive. Honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first fruits of all your increase. Proverbs 3:9. How we handle money reveals what we trust, value, and place first. Proverbs teaches us to honor God with our possessions because everything we have ultimately depends upon His provision. Our ability to work, learn, create, and produce has been made possible by opportunities, abilities, relationships, and circumstances we did not create entirely by ourselves. Honoring God with our resources begins with recognizing that we are stewards rather than absolute owners. The verse speaks of first fruits, the first and best portion of what was received. This reveals priority. God was not to be remembered only after every personal desire had been satisfied. Giving first expressed gratitude and trust. The same principle applies to us. Generosity should not be merely an occasional response to whatever remains. It can become an intentional act of worship. Honoring God financially also includes earning honestly, spending responsibly, avoiding waste, meeting obligations, caring for family, and helping those in need. Money should reflect our faith rather than compete with it. Ask yourself whether your financial choices reveal trust in God or constant fear of not having enough. Are your resources serving meaningful purposes, or are they being consumed entirely by comparison and temporary desire? What we possess becomes spiritually significant when it is placed under God's direction. But honoring God also requires patience, because the desire to gain wealth quickly can lead us away from wisdom. Lesson 72. Wealth gained quickly may disappear quickly. Wealth gained by dishonesty will be diminished, but he who gathers by labor will increase. Proverbs 13:11. Rapid gain is attractive because it appears to remove the need for time, discipline, and patience. People are often drawn toward opportunities, promising great rewards with little effort. But Proverbs warns that wealth obtained too quickly, especially through dishonest or careless means, is difficult to preserve. When something is gained without discipline, the person receiving it may never develop the judgment needed to manage it. Quick profit can also awaken greed. A small success creates confidence. Confidence becomes carelessness, and soon greater risks are taken in pursuit of another immediate reward. By contrast, wealth gathered gradually through honest labor tends to develop patience and responsibility. Slow growth teaches us how to manage resources, recover from setbacks, and distinguish genuine opportunity from unrealistic promises. This does not mean every sudden blessing is wrong. Unexpected opportunities and rapid progress can occur. The warning concerns our motives and methods. Are we chasing speed because we are unwilling to accept a faithful process? Does the opportunity depend upon deception, exploitation, or promises that seem too good to be true? Do not allow urgency to silence discernment. Resources gained dishonestly carry more than financial risk. They also damage peace, reputation, and integrity. Steady progress may appear less impressive, But what is built wisely has a stronger foundation. And that foundation requires honesty in every transaction, including the ones that seem too small for anyone to notice. Lesson 73. Honesty matters, even in small transactions. A false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. Proverbs 11. In the marketplace of the ancient world, dishonest merchants could use false weights to give customers less than what they had paid for. The deception might have appeared small, but God saw it clearly. Proverbs teaches that honesty matters in every transaction. Integrity is not reserved for large decisions. It is revealed in small details, in accurate information, fair prices, truthful promises, honest reporting, and work delivered as agreed. A person may justify a minor deception by saying that everyone does it or that no one is truly harmed. But repeated dishonesty changes character. The more often we excuse small compromises, the easier larger compromises become. A just weight reflects respect for both God and other people. It says, "I will not use another person's lack of knowledge for my advantage." This principle applies in business, employment, taxes, agreements, and everyday exchanges. Do you provide what you promised? Do you disclose information another person reasonably needs before deciding? Would you conduct the transaction the same way if every detail became public? God delights in fairness because justice reflects his character. Financial success gained by deception is not genuine prosperity. It is temporary gain purchased with something more valuable. And even when resources are earned honestly, wisdom must guide how much financial obligation we accept. Lesson 74. Debt can limit our freedom. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. Proverbs 22:7. Debt creates an obligation against future income. When we borrow, part of what we earn tomorrow has already been promised today. Proverbs does not say that every form of borrowing is automatically sinful, but it clearly warns that debt changes the relationship between borrower and lender. The borrower loses a degree of freedom. Financial decisions become limited by payments that must be made, regardless of how circumstances change. Debt may create pressure in the home, delay generosity, and force people to remain in situations they would otherwise leave. This is why borrowing should be approached carefully rather than casually. Before accepting debt, understand the complete cost. Consider the interest, the length of the commitment, and what would happen if income decreased. Do not evaluate a purchase only by whether the monthly payment appears affordable. Ask whether the obligation supports something necessary and sustainable, or merely satisfies a temporary desire. Comparison often encourages people to purchase lifestyles they have not yet built the financial stability to support. Wisdom is willing to live more simply in order to preserve freedom. If you already carry debt, do not respond with shame. Face it honestly, create a realistic plan, avoid unnecessary new obligations, and make steady progress. Financial freedom is rarely restored through one dramatic action. It is usually rebuilt through repeated discipline. And one particularly dangerous form of financial obligation begins when we guarantee commitments we may not be able to fulfill. Lesson 75. Irresponsible financial guarantees bring consequences. Do not be one of those who shakes hands in a pledge, one of those who is surety for debts. If you have nothing with which to pay, why should he take away your bed from under you? Proverbs 22:26-27. Generosity and financial responsibility are not the same as guaranteeing another person's debt. Proverbs repeatedly warns against making promises that place our own stability at risk. A financial guarantee may feel like a simple favor, especially when someone we care about is asking for help. But agreeing to become responsible for a debt means accepting the possibility that we may have to pay it entirely. Emotion should not hide that reality. We may feel pressured by guilt, loyalty, or the fear of disappointing someone. But wisdom considers what will happen if the other person cannot fulfill the agreement. Will your household be placed in danger? Will the obligation damage the relationship? Are you promising resources you do not actually possess? Helping someone should not require making commitments that neither person is prepared to carry. There may be wiser ways to offer support, providing a smaller amount that does not need to be repaid, helping create a budget, identifying another solution, or simply saying no with respect. A promise made under pressure can produce years of consequence. Do not allow the discomfort of declining today to create a crisis tomorrow. Financial boundaries are not a lack of compassion. They can protect both the relationship and the people who depend upon you. But while Proverbs warns against irresponsible commitments, it also teaches that responsible generosity brings life. Lesson 76. Generosity also enriches the giver. The generous soul will be made rich, and he who waters will also be watered himself. Proverbs 11:25. Generosity appears to reduce what we possess, yet Proverbs says it creates another kind of abundance. The generous person becomes rich in gratitude, relationships, purpose, and freedom from the control of possessions. This verse should not be treated as a formula promising that every gift will return as greater financial profit. Generosity is not a transaction designed to manipulate God. It is an expression of trust and love. When we give, we declare that money is a tool rather than our master. We loosen the grip of fear and remember that our resources can become part of someone else's answer to prayer. Generosity includes money, but it is not limited to money. We can offer time, attention, knowledge, encouragement, hospitality, and practical help. The generous person notices needs and asks, "What has God placed in my hands that could serve someone else?" Wise generosity also includes discernment. Giving should not continually support destructive behavior or ignore our legitimate responsibilities. We are called to help in ways that truly benefit others. Sometimes the greatest generosity is meeting an urgent need. At other times, it is helping someone develop the ability to stand again. A closed hand may protect possessions while shrinking the heart. An open hand discovers that blessing is not found only in receiving, and Proverbs gives particular attention to generosity toward those who are most vulnerable. Lesson 77. Helping the needy honors God. He who has pity on the poor lends to the Lord, and he will pay back what he has given. End of Proverbs 19:17. God identifies himself closely with the needs of the poor. Proverbs teaches that kindness shown to a vulnerable person is noticed by the Lord himself. This gives dignity to acts the world may overlook. A meal offered, a burden shared, a bill assisted, or an opportunity created may seem small, but God sees the compassion behind it. Helping the needy is not about displaying superiority. It is not an opportunity to make another person feel indebted or ashamed. True compassion recognizes the humanity, value, and dignity of the person receiving help. We should give in ways that preserve respect whenever possible. This may mean listening before assuming what someone needs. It may mean offering practical assistance privately rather than publicly displaying the act. We must also resist the temptation to evaluate every struggling person through suspicion. Wisdom uses discernment, but a hardened heart can call itself discerning simply to avoid generosity. Ask God to help you notice needs you have learned to overlook. You may not be able to solve every problem, but you can respond faithfully to the opportunities placed before you. What is offered to the vulnerable is never invisible to God. And when compassion is joined with integrity, even modest resources can become more honorable than great wealth obtained through wrongdoing. Lesson 78. A little with righteousness is better than much with deceit. Better is a little with righteousness than vast revenues without justice. Proverbs 16:8. More is not always better. A larger income gained through dishonesty may create comfort while destroying peace. An impressive lifestyle supported by exploitation is not evidence of genuine success. Proverbs teaches that the moral condition of our resources matters more than their amount. A little earned honestly can be received with gratitude and enjoyed without fear of exposure. Dishonest gain carries hidden burdens. It may require continued lies, create anxiety, damage others, and harden the conscience. The person must protect not only the wealth, but also the story used to obtain it. Righteousness may sometimes appear costly. Doing what is right can mean declining a profitable opportunity, returning money that does not belong to us, correcting an error that benefited us, or refusing to participate in an unjust system. Those choices may reduce immediate gain, but they preserve something far more valuable, a clear conscience before God. Do not envy people whose apparent prosperity requires compromise. You can see the possessions, but not always the cost being paid within their character, relationships, or peace. Measure success by faithfulness, not merely by accumulation. A simple life built honestly stands on stronger ground than abundance supported by deceit. And among the treasures righteousness protects is a name that money cannot easily restore once it has been lost. Lesson 79. Never sacrifice your reputation for money. A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, loving favor rather than silver and gold. Proverbs 22:1. A good name is built slowly. It is formed through promises kept, people treated fairly, mistakes admitted, and responsibilities handled consistently. Money can be earned, lost, and earned again. Trust is often much harder to rebuild. Proverbs teaches that character and reputation are more valuable than great riches because they affect every area of life. A good name opens doors that money cannot purchase. People feel safe entering agreements with someone whose word is dependable. But one dishonest decision can damage years of credibility. This does not mean we should live for public approval. Sometimes doing what is right will cause people to misunderstand or criticize us. A good name is not universal popularity. It is the reputation that grows from integrity before God and consistency toward others. When financial pressure increases, reputation may seem negotiable. A person may think, I will compromise only once, repair the situation later, and no one will know. But character is changed by what we permit ourselves to do in secret. Never exchange long-term trust for short-term gain. Before accepting an opportunity, ask what it will require you to become. Money can improve circumstances, but it cannot compensate for the loss of honesty, peace, and respect. And once we understand that wealth is not the highest treasure, we become ready for the final lesson in this section, learning when enough is truly enough. Lesson 80. True wealth includes learning to be satisfied. Better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure with trouble. Proverbs 15-16. Contentment is the ability to receive what we have without allowing what we lack to control our peace. This does not mean rejecting ambition, refusing growth, or pretending unmet needs do not matter. Contentment and progress can exist together. We can work toward a better future while remaining grateful in the present. The problem begins when satisfaction is always attached to the next achievement. I will have peace when I earn more. I will be grateful when I own what they have. I will enjoy life after I reach the next level. But the next level often introduces another comparison. Without contentment, abundance expands our desires without satisfying them. Proverbs says a little with reverence for God is better than great treasure, accompanied by trouble. Peace with God, honest relationships, and a clear conscience cannot be measured by a bank balance. Some people possess much, but live in fear of losing it. Others have less but enjoy what is present because their identity is not built upon possessions. Ask yourself what enough means. Have your desires grown faster than your gratitude? Are you sacrificing peace, health, family, or faithfulness to maintain an image? Contentment reminds us that possessions can support life, but they cannot become its meaning. Receive blessings with gratitude. Manage them wisely. Share them generously, but do not ask them to provide what only God can give. These 10 lessons have shown us that financial wisdom begins by honoring God. Wealth should be gained patiently and honestly, debt should be approached carefully, and promises should never exceed our ability to fulfill them. Generosity frees the heart. Compassion honors God. Righteousness is worth more than dishonest abundance. And a good name must never be exchanged for temporary profit. Ultimately, true wealth includes the ability to live with gratitude and peace. But the clearest test of these principles is often found not in public transactions, but within the home. It is there that our priorities become visible, our habits affect the people closest to us, and our character is revealed through ordinary daily life. A person may appear wise in public while creating tension in private. They may provide materially while neglecting the relationships those resources were meant to support. Proverbs, therefore, turns our attention from the resources we manage to the home we are building. Lesson 81. A home is built through daily decisions. The wise woman builds her house, but the foolish pulls it down with her hands. Proverbs 14:1. A home is built with more than walls, furniture, and financial provision. It is also built through words, attitudes, routines, priorities, and decisions repeated every day. Proverbs presents wisdom as a builder. Wisdom strengthens trust, protects unity, and creates an atmosphere where people can grow. Foolishness does the opposite. It tears down what may have taken years to establish. Most homes are not built or destroyed through one dramatic moment. They are shaped gradually. One patient response strengthens safety. One sincere apology restores trust. One promise kept creates stability. But repeated criticism, neglect, dishonesty, or uncontrolled anger can weaken a household little by little. This principle applies to everyone within the home. Each person contributes something to its atmosphere. Ask yourself what your presence brings into the lives of those closest to you. Do your words encourage or discourage? Do your habits create stability or confusion? Do you make the home a place where people can speak honestly, or must everyone carefully avoid your reactions? Building a home requires intention. It means praying for the people who live there, listening to their needs, sharing responsibilities, and choosing love even when patience is required. You may not be able to control every person in your household, but you can decide whether your own actions will build or tear down. And one of the most valuable things wisdom can build within a home is peace. Lesson 82. Peace at home is worth more than luxury. Better is a dry morsel with quietness than a house full of feasting with strife. Proverbs 17:1. A beautiful house is not necessarily a peaceful home. A family may possess comfort, food, opportunities, and material abundance while living under constant tension. Proverbs says, "A simple meal enjoyed in peace is better than a feast surrounded by conflict." This challenges the belief that providing more possessions can compensate for emotional absence, disrespect, or unresolved anger. Material provision matters. Families have real needs, and responsible work is an act of love. But possessions cannot replace presence. A larger home cannot heal conversations filled with contempt. Expensive gifts cannot restore the trust damaged by repeated dishonesty. Sometimes people become so focused on creating a better lifestyle that they lose the relationships the lifestyle was intended to bless. Peace does not mean avoiding every disagreement. Healthy families still face difficult decisions, disappointment, correction, and change, but conflict can be handled without humiliation, manipulation, threats, or cruelty. A peaceful home is one where people can disagree and still know they are loved. Protect that peace carefully. Do not allow pride to prolong arguments that an apology could end. Do not bring outside frustration into the home and release it upon those who feel safest to hurt. The people closest to us should not receive the worst version of us simply because we believe they will remain. True prosperity includes an atmosphere of respect, gratitude, safety, and love. And creating that atmosphere also requires guidance and correction, especially when children are being formed. Lesson 83. Discipline should come from love and responsibility. He who spares his rod hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines him promptly. Proverbs 13:24. Biblical discipline is not permission for cruelty, uncontrolled anger, humiliation, or abuse. Its purpose is not to make a child afraid of the parent. Its purpose is to teach, guide, protect, and form character. Proverbs connects loving discipline with responsibility because a parent who never corrects harmful behavior leaves a child unprepared for consequences outside the home. Children need affection, encouragement, boundaries, and consistent instruction. Discipline should be appropriate, measured, and guided by the child's well-being, not by the adult's frustration. Correction given in rage often teaches fear rather than wisdom. Before disciplining, a parent should first regain self-control. The goal is not to release anger, but to help the child understand what was wrong, why it matters, and what should be done differently. Rules should be clear enough to understand and consistent enough to trust. A child should not be punished today for behavior that was ignored yesterday simply because the parent's mood has changed. Loving discipline also recognizes growth. It does not continually define children by their failures. It makes room for confession, restoration, and another opportunity to choose well. Some of the strongest discipline comes through natural consequences, honest conversation, loss of privileges, and faithful example. Children learn not only from what parents demand, but from what parents demonstrate. Correction without relationship can produce resentment. Relationship without correction can produce confusion. Wisdom brings truth and love together. And part of raising children wisely is teaching them to value the instruction of those who genuinely care for them. Lesson 84. Listening to parents can prevent unnecessary pain. My son, hear the instruction of your father, and do not forsake the law of your mother. Proverbs 1:8. Parental instruction can become a form of protection. Parents often see dangers that children and young people cannot yet recognize because they have already witnessed where certain choices can lead. Their warnings may feel restrictive, especially when desire is strong and acceptance from friends seems urgent. But many boundaries are not designed to remove joy. They are designed to prevent avoidable pain. This does not mean every parent is always correct. Parents are human, and some relationships are complicated or harmful. Scripture never requires someone to remain silent about abuse or obey commands that lead to sin or danger. But where parents offer sincere and godly instruction, wisdom listens before rejecting it. The experience of a trustworthy parent can provide insight that enthusiasm has overlooked. Young people may believe they do not understand me, when their parents may understand the consequences more clearly than they realize. Listening does not mean every disagreement immediately disappears. It means considering the instruction with humility, rather than dismissing it simply because it interferes with preference. And adult children can continue to honor their parents through respect, gratitude, care, and thoughtful attention, even though the relationship and responsibilities change with maturity. Wise instruction becomes like an ornament upon the life of the person who receives it. It can preserve years that might otherwise be spent repairing preventable mistakes. And when wisdom is practiced across generations, it creates something valuable for the entire family, a heritage of integrity. Lesson 85. Family honor is built through character. The righteous man walks in his integrity. His children are blessed after him. Proverbs 27. The choices of one generation often affect the next. A parent's integrity creates more than a personal reputation. It establishes an example that children can observe and a foundation upon which they can build. Children notice whether promises are kept, whether apologies are sincere, and whether faith is practiced only in public or also at home. They listen to how adults speak about other people. They observe how money is handled, how conflict is resolved, and how responsibility is carried. No parent demonstrates these qualities perfectly. Children do not need the illusion of a flawless parent. They need the example of an honest one, someone willing to admit mistakes, seek forgiveness, and continue growing. Integrity blesses children because it creates stability. They learn that truth matters, that commitments should be honored, and that failure can be confronted without deception. Family honor is not created through appearances. A respected family name means little if those within the home live in fear, secrecy, or resentment. True honor grows when people consistently choose what is right before God. Even those who did not receive a healthy example can begin a different legacy. You are not required to repeat every pattern you inherited. Through God's wisdom, destructive cycles can end, and new traditions of honesty, faith, patience, and love can begin. But integrity within a family becomes difficult to preserve when conflict is allowed to dominate the home. Lesson 86. Constant conflict makes any home difficult to live in. Better to dwell in a corner of a housetop than in a house shared with a contentious woman. Proverbs 21:9. The image in this proverb is intentionally uncomfortable. It says that living in a small, exposed corner would be preferable to remaining inside a spacious home filled with constant conflict. The principle applies beyond one gender. A contentious person creates repeated tension through criticism, accusation, argument, and the refusal to let small matters rest. Over time, others begin to withdraw. They avoid conversations, stay away from home, or hide their honest thoughts, because every difference becomes a battle. Conflict may become a habit. A person can grow so accustomed to correcting, questioning, or complaining that they no longer recognize the atmosphere they are creating. Ask yourself whether you consistently require others to defend themselves around you. Do you search for problems even during peaceful moments? Must every disagreement end with your victory? Sometimes constant conflict hides deeper pain, insecurity, exhaustion, or resentment. Those issues should be addressed honestly rather than continually released upon the household. Peace may require changing communication patterns, seeking pastoral or professional help, and learning to discuss difficult subjects without attacking character. No one person is responsible for every problem in a family, but each person can examine the part they contribute. A home cannot become peaceful if everyone waits for someone else to change first. And one of the strongest forces for reducing conflict is patience. Lesson 87. Patience protects family relationships. A wrathful man stirs up strife, but he who is slow to anger allays contention. Proverbs 15:18. Family relationships create frequent opportunities for impatience. The people who live together see each other when they are tired, worried, rushed, disappointed, and under pressure. Small habits can become irritating precisely because they are repeated so often. Proverbs teaches that uncontrolled anger stirs conflict, while patience calms it. A patient person does not treat every irritation as evidence of disrespect. They ask questions before assuming motives. They allow another person to explain. They recognize that a difficult moment does not define the entire relationship. Patience creates room for mistakes. It remembers that growth takes time and that people may need to hear truth more than once before change becomes consistent. This does not mean endlessly tolerating harmful behavior. Boundaries and accountability may still be necessary, but patience determines how those boundaries are communicated. It refuses to use anger as the primary method of influence. Within the family, Tone often matters as much as content. The same concern can either invite conversation or create defense, depending upon how it is expressed. Slow down before responding. Do not make major conclusions during one emotional moment. Give the people you love the same grace you hope to receive when you are tired, confused, or wrong. Patience can prevent temporary frustration from causing lasting damage. And beyond the major conflicts, a household is continually being shaped by many smaller attitudes and habits. Lesson 88. Small attitudes can build or weaken a home. The wise woman builds her house, but the foolish pulls it down with her hands. Proverbs 14:1. We return to this proverb because building a home is not accomplished once. It is a daily process. A household is strengthened through ordinary acts that may appear unimportant, greeting one another warmly, expressing appreciation, sharing responsibilities, listening without distraction, and noticing when someone is struggling. Small acts communicate value, but small negative attitudes also accumulate. Sarcasm, constant complaining, emotional absence, and taking others for granted can slowly weaken connection. A family may not be destroyed by one large argument, but by years of small dismissals that were never addressed. Do not underestimate the effect of your daily attitude. The atmosphere often changes when one person consistently chooses gratitude instead of complaint, service instead of selfishness, and calm instead of unnecessary tension. Ask what you are repeatedly contributing. Are you waiting for others to make the home better while refusing to change your own habits? What simple action could strengthen someone today? Perhaps it is expressing appreciation, helping without being asked, turning off a device to listen, or apologizing for a tone that seemed insignificant to you but was painful to someone else. A strong home is built through love made practical, and among the most important practical expressions of love is faithfulness. Lesson 89. Faithfulness strengthens our most important bonds. Rejoice with the wife of your youth, and always be enraptured with her love. Proverbs 5:18-19. Proverbs presents marriage as a relationship to be protected, enjoyed, and honored. Faithfulness is more than avoiding a final act of betrayal. It includes guarding the heart, maintaining appropriate boundaries, and continuing to invest in the relationship after the excitement of the beginning changes into the responsibilities of daily life. Marriage can weaken when familiarity becomes neglect. The couple may continue sharing a home while slowly becoming strangers because work, stress, devices, and unresolved disappointment receive more attention than the relationship itself. The instruction to rejoice with the spouse of your youth reminds us that affection should be cultivated. Gratitude must be expressed. Time must be protected. Difficult conversations must not be postponed indefinitely. Faithfulness also includes refusing comparisons. Another person may appear more attentive, interesting, or understanding because we see only a limited part of their life. Comparison idealizes what is distant while ignoring the relationship that has been faithfully built over time. Protect private communication from inappropriate emotional intimacy. Do not nurture secret connections that compete with the covenant you have made. When trust has been damaged, restoration may require confession, accountability, counseling, patience, and evidence of lasting change. Faithfulness cannot be rebuilt through promises alone. It is rebuilt through consistent truth over time. Strong marriages bless more than two individuals. They can become part of a legacy that reaches beyond the present generation. Lesson 90. Leaving a legacy is more than leaving possessions. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Proverbs 13:22. An inheritance may include money, property, or resources that create opportunity for future generations. Wise financial preparation can be a meaningful act of love, but legacy includes far more than possessions. We also leave memories, values, examples, habits, words, and patterns of relating to God and others. A person may leave great wealth while also leaving division, confusion, or wounds that money cannot repair. Another may leave fewer possessions but provide a heritage of faith, integrity, generosity, courage, and love. The strongest legacy is created through the life we live now. What will people remember about the way you treated them? What principles are your daily choices teaching? What patterns will the next generation need to continue, and which ones will they need to overcome? Do not wait until the end of life to think about what you are leaving behind. Legacy is being formed in today's conversations, priorities, apologies, and acts of faithfulness. Teach what you have learned. Share the stories of God's provision. Prepare others to manage responsibility rather than merely receive benefits. A good inheritance equips the next generation to live wisely. These 10 lessons have shown us that a home is built through repeated choices. Peace is worth more than luxury. Loving discipline provides guidance, wise instruction can prevent pain, and integrity blesses future generations. Constant conflict weakens a household while patience protects it. Small attitudes shape the atmosphere. Faithfulness strengthens our deepest bonds, and a true legacy extends far beyond material possessions. But even a home built with wisdom will not remain untouched by hardship. Families face disappointment, loss, uncertainty, illness, failure, and seasons when answers do not come quickly. The final 10 lessons will show us how wisdom responds when life becomes difficult. They will move us beyond avoiding mistakes and towards something even deeper, remaining faithful when circumstances cannot be controlled. Lesson 91. Difficulty reveals what is truly within us. If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. Proverbs 24:10. Adversity does not always create weakness. Often it reveals what was already present. When life is comfortable, patience, faith, and self-control may seem easy, but pressure exposes the foundation beneath them. Difficulty reveals where our confidence has been placed, how deeply truth has taken root, and whether our faith depends upon favorable circumstances. This verse is not intended to shame those who feel exhausted. Even faithful people experience fear, grief, and moments of weakness. The warning concerns surrendering completely when pressure arrives. Strength is not the absence of struggle. It is the willingness to continue depending upon God within the struggle. A difficult season may reveal areas that need attention. Perhaps your spiritual life has been sustained only by emotion. Perhaps you have carried every burden alone instead of allowing others to help. Perhaps fear has been quietly directing more of your life than you realized. Do not despise what adversity reveals. The revelation can become the beginning of growth. Ask what this season is teaching you about your heart. Where do you need deeper trust, stronger boundaries, wiser preparation, or greater dependence upon God? Hardship may expose weakness, but weakness placed before God does not have to remain weakness. It can become the place where endurance begins. And endurance is not proved by never falling. It is proved by refusing to remain on the ground. Lesson 92. The righteous may fall and rise again. For a righteous man may fall 7 times and rise again. Proverbs 24:16. A righteous life is not a life without failure. Proverbs does not say that the righteous never fall. It says they rise again. Sometimes we fall through poor decisions. At other times, disappointment, loss, rejection, or circumstances beyond our control bring us down. The number 7 emphasizes that failure may happen repeatedly. What distinguishes the righteous is not a perfect record, but a heart that continually returns to God. Failure can tempt us to believe that progress has been erased. One mistake becomes evidence that change was never real. Shame tells us there is no reason to try again. But God's mercy provides another response. Confess what was wrong. Receive correction. Repair what can be repaired. Learn what the fall revealed and take the next faithful step. Rising does not always feel dramatic. Sometimes it means praying again after spiritual disappointment. Sometimes it means returning to a responsibility after failure, or asking for help after realizing you cannot continue alone. Do not confuse falling with being finished. A fall can become destructive when pride refuses correction or despair refuses restoration. But when humility turns back toward God, the place of failure can become the place where wisdom grows. You may not rise with the same confidence you had before. You may rise more slowly and cautiously, but you can rise wiser. And during the process of rising, the heart may still carry a weight that Proverbs addresses directly: anxiety. Lesson 93. Anxiety weighs down the heart. Anxiety in the heart of man causes depression, but a good word makes it glad. Proverbs 12:25. Anxiety places weight upon the heart. It turns possibilities into threats, carries tomorrow's concerns into today, and causes the mind to rehearse outcomes that may never occur. A person may appear calm outwardly while carrying an exhausting battle within. Proverbs does not treat that burden as imaginary. It acknowledges that anxiety can bend the heart downward. Sometimes anxiety points toward a responsibility that needs attention. A difficult conversation must happen, a decision must be made, or help must be sought. At other times, anxiety grows from trying to control what remains beyond our power. Wisdom teaches us to distinguish between action and surrender. Do what can responsibly be done. Gather information, prepare, seek counsel, and take the necessary step. Then place what cannot be controlled before God. You do not have to solve every possible future before resting tonight. Bring the burden into the light. Speak with someone trustworthy. Pray honestly, rather than pretending to feel stronger than you do. And when anxiety becomes persistent or overwhelming, seeking professional support is not a failure of faith. Help can become one of the means through which God provides care. A heavy heart should not be carried in silence. Proverbs immediately shows that words can help lift that burden. Lesson 94. A word of encouragement can restore hope. A good word makes it glad. Proverbs 12:25. A good word may appear small compared with the weight another person is carrying. It may not change the circumstances, remove the diagnosis, restore what was lost, or answer every question. Yet it can remind a weary person that they have not been forgotten. Encouragement gives strength without denying reality. It does not say, everything is fine, when everything is not fine. It says, you do not have to face this alone. A good word may remind someone of progress they can no longer see. It may help them separate one failure from their entire identity. It may point them back toward God's faithfulness when fear has narrowed their vision. Do not assume people already know what they mean to you. Express gratitude, recognize faithfulness. Tell someone when their courage has encouraged you. At the same time, encouragement should be sincere. Empty praise may provide a temporary feeling, but truthful words create deeper strength. Listen carefully enough to understand what the person actually needs. Some need reassurance, others need permission to rest, courage to seek help, or a reminder that beginning again is still possible. Ask God to make your words a source of life. You may never know how one timely sentence prevented someone from surrendering to despair. But human encouragement, valuable as it is, cannot become our final refuge. Every person has limits. There are moments when only God can provide the security the soul requires. Lesson 95. God can be our refuge in uncertainty. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it and are safe. Proverbs 18:10. A strong tower offered protection when danger approached. From within its walls, people could find shelter, stability, and a perspective they did not possess while exposed in the open. Proverbs uses this image to describe the Lord. Running to God does not mean escaping responsibility or pretending the danger is unreal. It means refusing to face uncertainty as though we were completely alone. We run to Him through prayer, scripture, worship, remembrance, and surrender. We bring fear honestly, rather than hiding it beneath religious language. God's name represents His character. He is faithful when circumstances are unstable. He remains wise when we are confused and present when we feel abandoned. Safety in God does not mean that nothing painful will ever happen. It means that pain cannot remove us from His care or destroy the eternal foundation beneath our lives. When uncertainty rises, notice where you instinctively run. Do you seek control, distraction, approval, or constant information? Some of those responses may offer momentary relief without giving the heart true security. Return to God before fear becomes your counselor. Remember what He has already carried you through. Place the unknown future into the hands of the one who already sees it. From that refuge, we can face life with a courage that is not rooted in pride, but in peace with God. Lesson 96. A clear conscience produces courage. The wicked flee when no one pursues, but the righteous are bold as a lion. Proverbs 28:1. Guilt creates fear even when no visible threat is present. A person living dishonestly may constantly wonder what others know, when the truth will appear, or whether one question will expose what has been hidden. Deception makes ordinary moments feel dangerous. Righteousness produces another kind of life. The righteous are not bold because they believe nothing can harm them. Their confidence comes from having no secret life they must continually protect. A clear conscience creates freedom. It allows a person to speak truth without remembering several versions of the story. It allows them to stand firm without fearing that hidden compromise will weaken their position. This does not mean the righteous never fail. A clear conscience is not the claim of perfection. It belongs to those who confess sin, make wrongs right where possible, and refuse to build life upon concealment. If fear has been following you, ask whether something unresolved is contributing to it. Is there truth you need to tell? A promise you need to fulfill? A dishonest pattern you need to leave? Courage may begin with confession. When our lives are brought into the light, fear loses one of its strongest weapons. We can then face opposition with humility and strength, knowing our confidence rests not in appearing perfect, but in walking honestly before God. That honest life is strengthened further by listening to wisdom. Lesson 97. Wisdom provides security in a chaotic world. Whoever listens to me will dwell safely and will be secure without fear of evil. Proverbs 1:33. Wisdom does not promise a world without danger. It promises a life that is not governed by constant fear. Listening to God's wisdom protects us from many consequences created by impulsiveness, pride, harmful relationships, dishonesty, and lack of preparation. It also gives stability when problems cannot be avoided. A wise person may still face loss, illness, betrayal, or uncertainty, but they possess a foundation that chaos cannot easily remove. They know how to pause before reacting, seek counsel before deciding, and turn toward God when understanding is incomplete. Security does not come from predicting every future event. It comes from knowing how to respond when the unexpected happens. The person who listens to wisdom has already established convictions before pressure arrives. They do not need to invent their values during the crisis. This is why the lessons throughout Proverbs are practical. They prepare us before the day of testing. Every act of obedience strengthens the foundation. Every truth practice becomes part of the stability we carry into the next season. The world may remain uncertain, but the heart does not need to remain directionless. Listen closely to God's instruction. Allow it to govern ordinary life, and it will be present when extraordinary difficulty comes. A life shaped by that wisdom does more than protect the individual. It leaves an influence that continues in the lives of others. Lesson 98. A righteous life leaves a lasting influence. The memory of the righteous is blessed, but the name of the wicked will rot. Proverbs 10:7. Every life leaves something behind. Long after possessions have been distributed and achievements forgotten, people remember how they were treated. They remember whether our words brought courage or fear, whether our presence created peace or tension, and whether our faith remained visible when life became difficult. Proverbs says the memory of the righteous is blessed. This does not mean righteous people become famous. Many faithful lives are known only within a family, church, neighborhood, or small circle of relationships. Their influence is powerful because it is personal. A parent's prayer may be remembered for decades. A friend's loyalty may shape how another person later treats others. One act of integrity may teach a child that truth is worth the cost. We are creating memories through ordinary choices. Ask what kind of influence your current habits are leaving. Will people remember that you always needed to be right, or that you listened with patience? Will they remember what you accumulated, or how generously you lived? A blessed memory is not produced by managing an image. It grows from consistent righteousness before God. Live now in a way that will continue speaking when your voice is no longer present. And at the center of that life must remain the reverence for God with which this entire journey began. Lesson 99. Fearing the Lord leads to a satisfied life. The fear of the Lord leads to life, and he who has it will abide in satisfaction. He will not be visited with evil. Proverbs 19:23. Reverence for God brings order to the heart. It places ambition, possessions, relationships, and personal desires beneath his authority. When God is given his rightful place, other things no longer need to carry the weight of becoming our identity or security. The fear of the Lord is not terror that drives us away from him. It is holy respect that draws us into obedience. It recognizes his goodness, authority, wisdom, and power. Proverbs connects this reverence with satisfaction because the person who trusts God no longer needs every circumstance to unfold perfectly before experiencing peace. Satisfaction does not mean the absence of desire. We may still pray for healing, provision, restoration, or opportunity, but those desires no longer determine whether life has meaning. The person who fears God can receive abundance without pride and endure lack without losing hope. They understand that the greatest blessing is not always getting more. Sometimes it is being freed from the belief that more is necessary before gratitude can begin. A satisfied life is not built upon having everything. It is built upon knowing the one who remains enough in every season. And this brings us to the final lesson, the principle that gathers all the others into one continuing pursuit. Lesson 100. Wisdom must become a daily pursuit. Wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom, and in all your getting, get understanding. Proverbs 4:7. Wisdom is not a lesson we complete once. It is a pursuit that continues throughout life. New responsibilities require new discernment. Different seasons expose different weaknesses. What was sufficient for yesterday may need to deepen before tomorrow's challenge arrives. Proverbs tells us to get wisdom because wisdom must be sought, received, practiced, and protected. It does not transform us merely because we have heard it. These 100 lessons will have little value if they remain only as ideas we agreed with for a moment. Wisdom becomes visible when we guard the heart, restrain the tongue, choose relationships carefully, receive correction, work diligently, handle money honestly, build peaceful homes, and trust God in adversity. You do not need to practice all 100 lessons perfectly tomorrow. Begin with the truth God has brought most clearly to your attention. Perhaps you need to apologize, establish a boundary, finish a delayed responsibility, seek counsel, forgive an offense, or place an uncertain future back into God's hands. Take one faithful step, then continue seeking. Wisdom is not a destination where we finally become incapable of error. It is a daily posture of humility before God. The wise person continues asking, Lord, what are you teaching me? What must I change? How can I honor you in this decision? The journey began with the fear of the Lord, and it ends in the same place. God is the source of wisdom, the guide along the path, and the one who gives our obedience its eternal purpose. The more we seek his heart, the more our choices can reflect his truth. And the more his wisdom shapes our lives, the more our lives can become a source of strength, peace, and blessing to others. These 100 lessons have taken us through the heart, our words, relationships, character, decisions, work, resources, family, and adversity. Now one question remains. Which of these lessons will you begin living today? Wisdom is not proven by how much we hear. It is proven by what we choose to do next. After 100 lessons, the question is no longer whether God has spoken. The question is whether we are willing to listen. Maybe one lesson exposed an attitude you need to change. Maybe another reminded you of a conversation you need to have, a habit you need to leave behind, or a decision you need to place back into God's hands. Do not ignore that conviction. You do not need to transform your entire life in one day, but you can take one honest step today, one apology, one act of obedience, one boundary, one decision guided by wisdom instead of emotion, one moment of trust instead of fear. That is often how God changes a life, not through one dramatic moment, but through faithful decisions repeated day after day. Let us pray. Lord, thank you for speaking to us through your word. Do not allow these lessons to remain only in our minds. Plant them deeply within our hearts. Give us wisdom when we feel uncertain, humility when we are corrected, patience when we are provoked, and courage when obedience is difficult. Teach us to speak with grace, choose our relationships carefully, work faithfully, handle what you have given us responsibly, and trust you when the road ahead is unclear. Show each of us the step we need to take today, and give us the strength to take it. May our lives reflect your truth and lead others closer to you. In Jesus' name, amen. Before you leave, write in the comments which lessons spoke most directly to your life. Not simply the one you liked most, but the one you know you need to practice. Your answer may be exactly what another person needs to read today. And share this message with someone who is asking God for direction. Our mission is to bring the wisdom of his word to every nation and carry the message of Christ to the ends of the earth. May God give you wisdom for every decision, peace for every uncertain season, and strength to remain faithful in every step. God bless you.